Well, Somnambulist 408, we will have this up in podcast format at some juncture, and so you can listen to it. But I tell you what, Somnambulist 408, if you have any questions you want answered, why don't you go ahead and ask them now, and I promise you that we'll get to them at some juncture along the way. So,
Cool. Well, I shall take over now and officially announce. Welcome everybody to the Geek Apocalypse podcast. My name is Stephen Hesse. I run a podcast called Geek Apocalypse on geekapocalypse.com, and you're watching us live on Twitch with Ryon Day. Hello,
hey,
Ryon.
Guys. Hello once again. I think we talked last year at some point, and
we did. Yeah, I just checked it. Yeah. Yeah, we did. I just checked it because Ryan asked. Yeah.
Yeah. What was the date?
It was 8 months ago. Roundabout.
8? It seems like it was much farther away than 8 months ago.
Yeah.
So,
well, it might have been actually. Well, no, actually, it would have been more than 8 months. Yeah, it may have been 10. I think it was before May, so it would have been I think it was around April time, something like that, maybe. I know that I can tell you how much it was because the Co-optitude was about like a level 50.
Let me interrupt you here for a second.
Sorry.
People are still saying my mic levels are really low. So
yeah, you are a bit.
I'm trying to fix that. Yeah, I'm trying to fix it, but there's just
they're suggesting moving your mouth thing closer to you.
All right, we can do that. How about that? Is that better? So my mouthpiece is now just right up there. It's weird because usually people complain that it's too loud if it's near.
I'm going to see if I can increase you, Ryan, just to be on my end.
Yeah,
on my end.
Yeah, can you see if you can increase your Skype volume if you're using Windows?
Yep.
No, we're here. Better. Okay, that's good. A little better. All right, that's good. Let me move it even closer. Hello. All right. So that's about as close as it gets without me putting it in my mouth. So it's about, I'm also going to have to drink my coffee out of the other side of my mouth. So, you know.
I thought you were doing. I thought you were doing
the Sidewinder.
I thought you were doing that because like you had like some sort of label on the label on the on the mug that you couldn't show. Yeah, for notice it's a tabletop mug. Yeah, that's cool.
Oh, good. No, I'm not ashamed of that.
But anyway,
have to shout it out. Wow, people are really not liking it. The volume. I promise, guys, that I'm doing everything that I can.
Yeah, I'm doing everything I can as well. I'm literally have my volume at the lowest it can be. And
oh my god, my input volume. The Mac keeps moving my input volume.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I tell you what, dude. Can I restart Skype real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Can I do that?
Yeah,
okay.
Of course you can. Yeah.
All right.
It should just automatically come back. You come back anyway.
Okay, cool.
Sorry guys, modern technology.
Check. Hello.
That's a lot better.
Okay, so restarting Skype prevented Skype from moving automatically, reducing my input volume. So guys, hopefully #shitshow is now over and done with. I think we're Gucci now, guys. No more. Do you guys use do you have the term shit show in jolly old England? This cultural exchange, real quick, because Collectible Cat, a British compadre of mine.
Yeah.
We have a cultural exchange, and I always ask her what different things are called in Britain compared to here.
Yeah.
So we have good conversations about that when we stream together.
Cool.
Okay, so now it's a bit overdone. People are not happy. Now I'm clipping, so let me move that farther away from my mouth, and that should be awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, how do I sound?
You sound louder to me, so I don't know what... you sound absolutely perfect my end, so I don't know what's happening here.
And now I can drink coffee from the front of my mouth now.
Indeed.
Okay.
But yeah, anyway, so should we... Yeah. So should we start officially?
Good, guys, finally. Yes, we're officially starting.
Yeah, we're officially
The
starting.
shit show is, the shit storm has passed, dude.
Yeah, yeah.
We're in the, or we could be in the eye of the shit hurricane. You know, just the calm before the storm.
Yeah, yeah. We see it on the horizon, and we're like, run, quick.
Yes. So apparently Skype does not apply settings until you quit and restart Skype. So the more you know, guys. All right.
All right. There you
Let's go ahead and get started.
Okay. So yeah, we're officially starting said podcast now. But yeah, so as Ryan was saying,
3, 2, 1,
go.
go.
But yeah, so we officially did a podcast for Geek Apocalypse at around 10 months ago. Where we're assuming it was around April, because as I was explaining, that Co-optitude was around. I think it was about something like 50 odd episodes when I spoke to you, and it's much more than that now.
Yeah. We're coming up on have we already hit 100? We must be on like 90 or something like that. Right?
Yeah,
I don't know actually.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
We're coming up on 100. We're coming up on the century.
Yeah.
The century mark.
So I suppose
very cool achievement.
So I suppose the most obvious question to start is, so what have you sort of been up to since then? Obviously, you've been having Co-optitude getting bigger and better, and kept doing that.
Yep.
But
yeah, we got the new set.
Yep, it's amazing, I have to say. How did that come about?
It does look really good. Well, Geek and Sundry got purchased by Legendary Pictures, as a lot of you know, and they're being very hands-off. They're letting everything continue, but with higher production values. So we now have an official studio in Burbank, and we have a set inside the studio in Burbank. I've tweeted out several photographs of it. It looks absolutely marvelous. It's really good. We have a very professional production, and the episodes have been running super smooth. Now that we have, people assisting, getting everything up and running. Zach, of course, you guys know Zach. He's the guy who runs the Twitch channel. Dude is a wizard. He's absolutely incredible. Incredibly hardworking, incredibly talented. He's got a really great vision for the Twitch channel. And he's an excellent producer. So, it's kind of like graduating into kind of a slightly bigger league, It's always a pleasure to do the show. And I always have a lot of fun flying out to LA for a weekend every few months. So that's what Co-optitude's been up to.
Does it feel
like in terms of?
I was just going to ask. Does it feel?
Yeah, go ahead.
Does it feel? I mean, what's the key discernible differences? I mean, is the crew bigger? I mean, is it noticeable on your show with Legendary taking over? Is it noticeable the difference in the production and everything else? I mean, obviously you mentioned the set's different,
absolutely.
but behind the scenes, I guess I'm asking.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we generally have some more assistance. We have people getting food for us, and it's less. It feels less. Sorry, I'm cutting and pasting questions from the channel because Somnambulist has to leave for work, so I am cutting and pasting their question into Sublime Text.
Okay.
So sorry about that. I just want to make sure that everybody gets everybody's curiosity is assuaged by the podcast today. Okay.
Common word.
Okay, so right. So basically, the deal is that now we've got people helping out dedicated to the AV equipment. We've got a dedicated producer. We've got we've always had the cameraman, but it's just there's more people doing specific tasks, so there's less jack of all trades action going on, and so that means that my sister and I can concentrate more on being in the moment and doing the show correctly and all of that good stuff. So everybody has a job to do, and when everybody has a job to do and they do it, then everything goes much more smoothly rather than corners being cut or somebody freaking to do this or that, or it's just it's a more professional atmosphere. So
cool. Sorry, I was just adjusting your video there. It was really.
It's like what Lollylol 1975 just said in my channel. It's like, I think if you watch some of the newer episodes, the increase in production quality in terms of lighting and videography is much, it's a stark difference, I feel. And I think that our attitudes are more positive because it's a more relaxing shoot, because it's less spur of the moment. It's more planned. So, hopefully that results in a higher quality product, and hopefully that everybody can notice that as well.
So in terms of the games and stuff that you play on Co-optitude, because you have obviously a lot of choice with the fact that it's all based on past games and various other things. Like, how much of an input do you have in terms of what games are done on the show?
there's generally a menu of options, and I sometimes have input. But you know what? The last 3 or 4 shoots, I have not had any input whatsoever deliberately. I'll generally find out the week of, a few days before, what games we're going to be playing, and of course, we don't do any research on them whatsoever. As you can see from the Wonderful 101 episode of a few weeks ago, which was a complete shit show, we often do not prepare, which is one of the points behind the show, is sort of spontaneity. The one episode where we did prepare, of course, was Chariot, because we've been, quite honestly, plugging that game since E3. We played it at E3 because it is such a wonderful work of art. And if you guys haven't picked up Chariot yet, it's just a wonderful, wonderful piece of work. And that game we had quite a bit of experience with, because our first Twitch stream was Chariot, and we did it a couple of other times as well before the Co-optitude episode. And so we were fairly well versed in the play mechanics. But that's the most preparation we've ever had for a game on Co-optitude. And I typically keep very hands-off when the game selection comes out, specifically because I want to have that spontaneous reaction to the game without having anything pre-planned, and that's a conscious decision on my part.
Yeah, just with people mentioning on the they got it free for Games to Go. That's good. Someone's just mentioned on my, I don't know if it's on yours as well, but yeah, they got it for free. The game you're referring to, so that's pretty cool. Yeah. They're asking me as well. For some bizarre reason, my webcam just froze, so I took it off the stream and I can't seem to get it to work again. But
I just saw that.
Yeah, no idea what's going on with that, because when I do it again, it just freezes.
C'est la vie. There is one exception, though. When I was at a local game store, Emerald Tavern, that I frequent to play board games at, and one of the people who works the counter recognized me and asked me to play. She just gave me a bunch of games, like, hey, we really love the show, take these games. And so I deliberately tried to pick one out of the selection to play on Co-optitude, and so that was the Army Men one, the Army Men episode. That was the only time I've had kind of direct input in what game to play. And there's been other times when I've kind of said, hey, these might be cool to play. And I also made sure that we did a Chariot episode because I believe in the game and I believe in that team so much. And I believe in that product so much that I wanted to give it a wide audience, as wide as I possibly could anyway. Mm. So other than that, I'm very much hands-off in terms of game selection and gameplay.
Mm-hmm. What is the kind of goal? What is the kind of goal for you in terms of Co-optitude? Because, I mean, obviously, I know you mentioned in the last podcast that we did that the main goal for you, and I'm sure Felicia will probably say the same thing, is to kind of just showcase you as siblings having fun playing a game. Is it still the premise now, or has it always been that way?
Yeah, honestly, where else is there to go? With the concept, right? I mean, it feels like that's kind of is what it is, and unless we decide to get really, really good with the game and then stream a playthrough from start to end with incredible technical skill, which would turn it into a different show than it is, which is, a mildly chaotic #shit show, which is what the show is. And it's funny, right? The point is to try to do as much improv comedy as possible in the form of the game, and to try to emulate that sibling interaction that a lot of us might have had as kids with our own brother and sister. Mm-hmm. And so I think we've succeeded admirably in that. And so, like, where the show can go from here, that's a really good question, and I don't know. There's an expression here in the U.S. It's like ride it till the wheels fall off, right? So I don't think the wheels have quite fallen off of Co-optitude yet. I still enjoy doing it. Each episode still feels a little fresh. I think the episodes are, by and large, funny. And where this is branched out to, of course, where this episode has branched out, where the show has branched out to, of course, have been the Twitch channel. Mm-hmm. Both myself and my sister have our own individual ones, as the people who are watching on Twitch probably know by now.
Yeah.
And then we've got the Geek and Sundry Twitch channel, which launched a few weeks ago and has been pretty amazing. So, I mean,
is there a possibility for Co-optitude to be on Twitch, or is it going to stay on the YouTube format? Because obviously Twitch is a more associated with gaming as opposed to YouTube, but obviously YouTube has arguably a bigger audience. So is Co-optitude always going to stay on Geek and Sundry YouTube, or is it going to branch out to Twitch?
So that's a really good question. And so what I would say is that there is a time and a place for produced, edited shows and there's a time and a place for a live audience. And we actually do one episode per week. We do a sort of a live co-optitude that is actually broadcast on the Geek and Sundry Twitch channel every Sunday. Time usually varies, but it's usually 1 p.m. Central American time. It's not Central American time, but Central, United States time. And we usually run for about 3 hours, and we'll play through a game from start to finish, which is the big difference between what we do on Twitch and what we're doing on YouTube. So YouTube is produced and edited to kind of condense down the funny that we do when seeing a game for the first time, right? And then the Twitch show is us playing the same game over a long period of time, and occasionally we'll get better at it. Right now we're playing Don't Starve Together, which our first episode was this past Sunday. And, you know, it's a bit different. So the thing is that Twitch is a different and very, very exciting medium when compared to YouTube. The show, I think, has reached its limit of its capabilities on the YouTube medium. Yeah. On the Twitch medium, you have the interactivity between the streamer and the audience. You have the possibility to do more episodes in the same vein and eventually reach the culmination of finishing the game, which is not the point behind co-optitude, right? The point behind the co-optitude is to be chaotic. The point behind Twitch is to be interactive with the audience and to deliver value that way. And so they're very different organisms, yeah, I feel. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, because I mean, it seems to me to indicate, because I watched your Divinity stream and I really enjoyed it, and one of the things that it seemed to me that your answer is pretty much what I thought, in that it's kind of Twitch gives a longer format and it allows for you to kind of do a longer walkthrough, because I've noticed in the co-optitude episodes that you very rarely have two parts to a show. I mean, you kind of do that as specials or whatever it is.
Sometimes, if the game is especially compelling or there's just a lot of content that we managed to deliver. There haven't been too many of those. Was it X-Men? Was the X-Men one of those?
Yeah, I remember the X-Men one, yeah. Yeah, you did do two for that, because you enjoyed it that much that you went, we got to do this next week as well.
we were, in that episode, there was even footage lost from that episode that was really funny. It was very disappointing, because some of the funniest footage that from the X-Men episode of Co-optitude, like way back when we were still in my sister's garage, some of that footage was lost, and it was some of the funniest footage too. But that was, I think, along with Goof Troop, one of my favorite episodes. And so it just, quality varies, guys, right? Everything is on a bell curve, right? You have a percentage of your episodes that are stunningly good. You have a percentage of your episodes that are stunningly bad. And then you've got, the middle of the bell curve, this kind of average performance, right? And that's the way the world works, right? Everything is on a standard Gaussian distribution. So, sometimes things deserve a two-parter. Sometimes they deserve 10 minutes total. It's just you never get to the game.
So you don't want to create another hashtag that you don't want.
No, definitely not.
Hashtag average.
Hashtag average, exactly.
But yeah,
it goes back to what I said the last time we cast it together, Stephen. Is that people either watch. By and large, if you look at the YouTube thing, people either want to watch pratfalls, Three Stooges type shit, or they want to watch a speed run where they don't even get a single health point knocked off, right? People don't want to watch the case, right? Because anybody can be average, right? But it takes a special kind of stupidity that we demonstrate in co-optitude to be really bad the way we are. And that's kind of where a lot of the humor comes in. So Zazu80 asks a really good question. Will I show up at the Geek and Sundry streams when I'm in LA? Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Definitely. I want to ask you about, because you touched on it with Legendary taking over Geek and Sundry, which obviously people seem to common knowledge now. I'm kind of interested in your opinion. I know you only have the one show as well as your Twitch and everything else, and you're involved because obviously your sister runs it, but I'm kind of interested to know what's your take on the progression that Geek and Sundry's made since we last spoke, because it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and the scope is endless. And I mean, I suppose also the more branch out question is, where do you see sort of television and stuff going? Because, you got Netflix and all Hulu and various other things. I'm not sponsored by any of these people, so don't ask. But yeah, it seems to be the power of the internet that basically everybody's becoming their own network. It seems to be what's happening. And people are losing their power. And I know in America, that's a really big issue right now, because the mainstream networks on TV are worried about people creating their own content, and content you can argue is more powerful than it's ever been. So what's your sort of take from the Geek and Sundry perspective of where it's going?
I mean, that's a question that's a bit above my pay grade. I'm just a dude who flies in every few months and makes Co-optitude episodes. I certainly have a personal opinion about that, but I certainly can't speak for Geek and Sundry or Legendary Pictures or anything like that. So, I mean, obviously, I think what we have now has definitely improved the Co-optitude situation, and hopefully, people would agree that the episodes are of higher quality in production and content. That's my personal feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, if you read YouTube comments, then everything's fucking garbage and rubbish. That's why I don't really read YouTube comments. But
basically, my joke about YouTube.
TV?
I used to do a joke about YouTube comments that it's a bit like going into a urinal. You only never look below halfway. That's basically what it's like. Is just watch your video, never look below halfway, never scroll down any further, because YouTube comments. Having said that, I mean, I watch a lot of the Geek and Sundry YouTube comments, and in general they're very, very nice. So do you think
in general, yeah.
Do you think it's sort of
But it's too easy to fixate on negativity, as we covered in our past podcast, and maybe we'll touch on that again today, because I have some of the, I guess we'll talk about TeamHuman and all of that great stuff later on, hopefully.
Definitely.
That's kind of the main thrust of my focus. That's my main focus these days, of course. So let me try and break apart your question a little bit.
Okay.
So I think that the only thing that's really keeping TV afloat is required bundling of cable channels today, in the United States at least. So I don't know if I don't know how cable TV works in the UK, but here in the US, it's basically like you buy a basic cable package, and it's like 60 channels, and you watch 3 of them, right? And so then you have like extended packages that you might want 1 channel, and they give you 20 more for like an exorbitant fee, right? So essentially, there's less and less money chasing more and more content when it comes down to it, right? And so when you have large broadcast TV and cable TV, they make very, very safe choices, and they cancel shows like Firefly, and they cancel shows, that are cool, like what was the one my sister was on? Not Supernatural, but
Eureka.
Eureka. They cancel shit like Eureka, and then they push new trash on us, like 3.5 Men or whatever that fucking shit Charlie Sheen show is. So they make very, very safe decisions, right? Because there's less money chasing more content, and so you want to fund the sure thing, right? Like in my opinion, the future of small content is increasingly going to stuff like Twitch, where you can directly speak to a very specific audience at a very, very low cost, right? Like, you want somebody who speedruns old video games, great. Show them some ads, right? Make a few pennies if you're the streamer. Charge them $5 a month for some emotes or something like that. That's a fucking awesome business model for the small streamer, right? But how is a small person going to make a funded, produced, edited, shot YouTube video that's multi-episodic and has multiple seasons? That shit ain't gonna happen, man, right? It's so difficult. It's incredibly difficult. And so it's the same with the indie game scene, is that you have these gigantic AAA titles where you're playing as a white man shooting brown people, right? And then you've got that wide gulf between anything but that, and then you have these small funded indie games like Chariot that do feature strong female protagonists, things like Life is Strange, right? Things that are interesting, right? And so it's the same thing between game content and between produced entertainment content.
Yeah.
Right? It's that you have the show where there's a strong white male protagonist, and then some non-white buddy sidekicks, and then you have smaller produced YouTube shows, right? Or smaller produced things like on Twitch and so on. So that's kind of where I see things going, is that the small person is increasingly going to be pushed out of any sort of pre-produced episodic content. That's my take.
Cool.
So going to be like the indie game scene at some point. So I may be full of shit, guys. I don't know. I'm just a man. I'm just a software engineer. Doing this in the stock, so.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff about I just seen a question on my chat related to that. Like, And I'm interested to ask you because I know we touched on this in the last podcast we did.
I want to touch on one more thing
Yeah,
because
cool.
my chat. So Toronto Gal 80, who's been an amazing person ever since we started Twitch streaming and ever since Geek and Sundry started, really.
Yeah, great girl.
So YouTube took away the downvote button. It's very hard to make a positive, constructive community on YouTube because the community and the way that people communicate is a sewer. It's an absolute sewer. Like YouTube, it's nigh impossible to form a community of any sort because it's very hard to police and comment and remove trolls from the conversation entirely. Yeah. And so YouTube is increasingly becoming a one-way content providing service. I think that the thing to do if you produce YouTube videos now is to honestly just turn off comments completely. It seems to me to be the rational thing to do and have it be almost like a broadcast TV thing. Twitch is unique in that you can have a very solid, productive community with a team of volunteer or even paid mods at some point. And you can produce content that's live or even hosted, or even pre-produced content. Pre-produced content on Twitch, I think, would be very interesting. I don't think anybody's really done that yet. It's all been live. So I think I would hope to see YouTube de-emphasized at some point in the future because it's an absolute fucking sewer.
I've referred to it as like the Wild West. Like it's just anarchy and there's no regulation or control. Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's interesting because to touch on what you said, I agree with you a lot about what you said in terms of people playing it safe. If you think about all the sort of mainstream industries, are you a UFC fan at all? I know you're into...
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
Because I'm a huge fan of Dana White, and I watch a lot of his videos, and he had a really great point.
He's brutally honest, and he's a great businessman.
Yeah. You can learn a lot from him, even if you don't like UFC.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think as a person, he's kind of not a great person, but I think he puts on a really gruff showbiz demeanor, but I think he is probably a better person than he actually displays himself to be.
Yeah.
But
I think he has to, yeah. I think he has to be. I think you're right. I do think he puts on a bit of a persona because of what he promotes. But there was a really interesting point he made where he basically said if you look at the films and everything, and while you were touching on the sort of generic stuff like 2.5 Men and various other things, even stuff like The Big Bang Theory, which is meant to promote
don't even get me started on that show.
But if you look at
terrible show.
It has a generic way about it because it still is the blonde girl and the guy's trying to chase the girl. Like it has too many sort of stereotypical viewpoints about it because it's just
all right. Now you're gonna hear my fucking rant about that. That's a fucking garbage show, dude. Like that show's that's a fucking garbage show, and the reason why is it's just a bunch of writers looking up Wikipedia entries on geeky stuff and then making sort of kind of jokes about geeky stuff. It's the same old jokes with a different vocabulary. This entirely superficial writing where they try to look up geeky synonyms for jokes that they were it's dick and fart jokes with geeky words in them. And to boot, moreover, the show is about a hot normal chick that's trying to deal with these crazy, awful, fucking Asperger's-y geeks, stereotypical geeks, right? The point of the Big Bang Theory is not to show a side of geekdom and nerddom that's anything but something to be laughed at and ridiculed. There's no compassion, there's no empathy, there's no understanding. It's just look how silly these fucking geeks are, right? And look how they're never going to get this hot girl. And how's this hot girl going to deal with these weirdo geeks, right? That's the premise of the Big Bang Theory, and it's fucking offensive to anybody, who's in that world. And honestly, when I see geeky people liking the Big Bang Theory, that shit offends me, dude. It's a terrible show, dude. That's a show that laughs at geeks. It's not a show that laughs with geeks. It's a show that laughs at geeks. The geeks are the target of the humor. The geeks are not the subject or the object of the humor. They're the target. That show punches down like a motherfucker.
I've always thought that. I'm glad you think that because I'm in the very few minority because it's such a very popular show that I do think that as well. So it's really interesting that you think that.
So that show ideally would be about how silly mainstream perceptions of geekdom are. That show would ideally be about how weird common things are and how geekdom actually gets things right, but it's not about that, right? That show serves to increase the gulf between people who like niche geeky interests and quote unquote normal people. That show is offensive, and I never watched that show ever.
I totally understand that. I totally agree with you. What kind of show then to kind of, again, we're going along the sort of negative route here, so let's go to the more positive stuff. Like what do you kind of, I know we'll get back to, you know, all the other stuff that you're involved in, but what kind of shows do you like then? I mean, I guess the more broader question would be, do you think there are actual content out there for people for the word geek, I suppose? I mean, I own a company with geek in the title, Geek and Sundry, obviously.
Yeah, sure.
So, I mean, what do you think promotes the best stuff? Or is there stuff that promotes it in mainstream media? Maybe that's the question.
I thought IT Crowd was pretty spot on.
Yeah. Great show.
I think that was a great show. I think Orphan Black is a tremendously intelligent show with a strong female protagonist who is played by an actor, is a peerless actor. What is it, Tatiana something?
Oh yeah,
the girl in Orphan Black. What a tremendous actor, man! She acts the fuck out of that role. Like, she owns the fuck out of that role, and she's so impressive. Such a good actor. Mm-hmm. The show is intriguing. It's well written. It's interesting, and it's I mean, what clones are? Oh well, sorry, spoiler alert. She's a clone, but clones are kind of geeky, right? The original X-Files was unabashedly geeky, especially the classic episode with Alex Trebek in it, Jose Chung's From Outer Space. That is my
legend.
Favorite.
Yeah.
That is my favorite X-Files episode, and unabashedly geeky. Why
did they never get together?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I like it better that way. It's sort of like what Larry David said. Why he's never gonna have a finale to Curb Your Enthusiasm, because everybody's already written the finale in their head, and no matter what he comes up with, it's never going to match up with what people have built up in their heads about it. So he's like, no, I'm never going to do it.
You reminded me while you were saying about that. Are you a Monty Python fan at all?
I was. I went through a Monty Python stage in my late teens and early 20s, and so it kind of, that part of me burned out into a withered husk. As I entered my mid 20s and early 30s.
When you grew up,
yeah. Well, no, there's some delightful and intellectual humor in Monty Python, more so in the TV show than in the movies, I feel.
Yeah, the TV show. That's not a lot of people see the TV show, but the TV show is amazing. Yeah.
The Department of Arguments or something like that. Remember that?
I just like the thing that cracks me up is just the bit, and now we're gonna fight, and it's just all these women with handbags fighting in a field.
Yeah, exactly.
If anyone's listening, people who are on the stream now watching this, if you're not a Monty Python fan, I implore you to watch some stuff. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because if you ever watched A Fish Called Wanda, he did a sequel to that called Fierce Creatures, and there's an interview of him. Yeah, there's an interview of him where he said if he had one regret, he got asked this in an interview, and he said there's one regret he ever had, it would be to not make Fierce Creatures, because he said the expectation level was so high, regardless of how good the film was, he it was just impossible to do.
That's why they should have stopped Star Wars at Return of the Jedi, right? Because even if the Phantom Menace hadn't been a complete piece of shit, or how good it was, it wouldn't have lived up to anybody's expectations about it. So like, he doubly sinned there, right? It's like, leave well enough alone, right? Like into something when it's on top, man. Like Bill Watterson did with Calvin and Hobbes, right? There was never a slow decline into mediocrity like Garfield, for example. Like, he was like, wow, I've said what I want to say, and I'm on top. So see you later, guys. And then now it's a legend, right? Mm-hmm. And now Star Wars sequels a punchline to a joke. That's all Star Wars sequels are. That's horrible for your life's work to be reduced to a punchline now.
Do you think it's going to be the same way with the new ones, or what's your sort of take on that?
I mean, I think they're not going to be very good, but that's just me, dude.
I think the natural course of action for any geek is one of pessimism. I really do.
When has lowered expectations ever betrayed us, right? Like,
exactly, yeah. Because then if it turns out good, you win anyway. It's all good, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I would say severely lowered expectations would be the right thing. So
yeah. I think I had that feeling towards Star Trek when they redid the Star Trek stuff, and I was like, yeah.
So those movies I thought were quite good. They were
Yeah.
fun. Those movies were fun romps. However, they also constituted an extreme betrayal of Gene Roddenberry's vision for the future.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You
Yeah,
get it?
yeah, yeah.
Because like Gene Roddenberry is sort of this hippy dippy dude. I get the impression that he dropped a lot of acid, you know, and a lot of acid and mushrooms, and he comes up with this vision for the future where, you know, there's this federation of planets, right? And then they're all about justice, and then these new Star Wars or new Star Trek films, they're all about beating shit up, right? They're all about the explosions, right? So, you know, they're fun space operas, those new Star Trek films, but they're also not quite Star Trek apart from the characters, right?
So they're kind of a compromise, I find. They're kind of the minus the sort of the things that the storylines that Gene Roddenberry came up with is sort of a compromise of it's the canon of it, but it's kind of a halfway house in that it's more action like as well. So
exactly,
yeah,
exactly. So I know I'm kind of sticking some sacred cows with some spears here, you know. But
no, but it's interesting because I think
it's the way it goes, right? You know.
Yeah, I think if you're gonna have something like a podcast or anything where you stream on the internet, I know I've heard your sister say this, is that you want to have a community. If any people are going to arise from the crop of like YouTube or the internet, it's going to come from, you know, individual people with individual personalities, and I think having different opinion on different things that are, you know, maybe have a mainstream opinion is actually really healthy.
Okay, so that's a really good point, and I want to connect that to a question somebody just asked.
Cool,
Bloody
yeah.
Albatross, I think. So Bloody Albatross, during our conversation about the Big Bang Theory, asked about my sort of invective regarding that show. Do you have that conversation with Will Wheaton, who of course is on the show?
Yeah,
right?
I was going to ask you that, but I didn't know whether.
No. Okay. So here's the deal, man. If it's good with you, if you're good, I'm good.
Yeah.
Like what you like, embrace what you like. Good for you. Have your opinion, love what you love, and love what you love unabashedly, and don't be ashamed to like what you like just because someone else doesn't like it, right? Everybody's going to have an opinion on everything, and you can't let the fact that somebody else doesn't like a certain thing sway you from that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't agree 100% with anybody. Yeah, and yet still I find time somehow, even though I don't agree completely with anybody in my life, I find the time and ability to have enriching, wonderful relationships with these people, right? And so I don't find the necessity to 100% like or approve things as long as I completely respect the people who are doing them and I can see where they're coming from. So, I mean, it's not a conversation I would feel that I have to have with Will Wheaton to bring him over to my side about the subject, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you know, you have a job on a show that's very popular, and that's good on you, man.
Mm-hmm.
But the show is problematic. But everything is problematic, right?
Yeah.
Everything's problematic somehow.
I think the key thing is to not downgrade the importance of just declaring things, and also to say that it's not for me. I love that phrase. I don't think people often say that enough, that, you know, if you don't like something, don't like sort of, you can voice their opinion and it may change their opinion about something. They may have a more informed policy about it, but yeah.
And something just tickled my brain. There was an article that somebody who I follow on Twitter wrote.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to find it right now, so it's going to be a little awkward silence, but I think it dovetails very nicely with the subject that we're talking about right now.
Cool.
So I'm trying to find a tweet from her.
Well, while you do that, I think I can quickly crowbar in. There was an article I read very similar to this, where it basically was saying that if you have a group of friends who you don't argue with and disagree with, you don't really have a real friend. And I found that very interesting, because there's a lot of people.
You're probably hiding something from them, or they're hiding something from you, right?
Yeah. Well, not just that, but if you have a bunch of people who all agree on the same stuff, because that seems to be what people want to find, is people who think the same, who have same opinions and all that kind of thing, and that's not actually incredibly useful for being a better human being. It's actually the opposite, is because you're reinforcing the things you already think, and then when you meet someone who has a different opinion, you almost don't know how to handle it, because you surrounded yourself with in an environment where you don't know what an opposing opinion is.
Yeah.
So you don't know how to debate, you don't know how to or anything like that, and I just found that a really interesting article.
So I found it. It's and her name is difficult to pronounce. So I think I'm gonna get completely slaughtered. It's Ijeoma Oluo, and she wrote an essay about you have to admit that things that you like are problematic in certain. And I'm gonna paste a link to this in my chat right now.
Cool.
So that is a very valuable way of looking at things. And she wrote this in wake of Trevor Noah, the South African comedian, taking over the Daily Show from Jon Stewart. And so people dug through his tweets and they found some shit that he said that was pretty shitty, you know? And people want to categorize things in one of two ways. They want to say that it's good and they want to say that it's bad. But there's this whole area of gray underneath where you can like something and you can still admit that there's problematic things that maybe they want to address in the future. But people are so defensive about being attacked that they just react to any sort of criticism with this kind of equal and opposite reaction of, oh, what? Nothing. What? I can't make jokes now? And then people who like that person will also meet with the same force, like saying something about something that saying that something about something they like is problematic is attacking them personally as well. So there's this inability to have a dialogue about things that are quite frankly problematic.
It's to do with objectivity, I think. Like it's very difficult, and it's a very, very good skill to have an objective view about to kind of look at things objectively and to kind of take yourself out of the equation, because as you're pointing out, people take things rather seriously when they get attacked in that manner. I also really don't like when people. I know Stephen Fry, who's a really famous celebrity over here. He often says the phrase, I'm offended. People use that as like their sword of defense. They'll go, I'm offended by what you've just said. Like that gives them the right to say that you can't say what you're saying, which is not right. That's not completely true at all. It's just used as a mechanism to go, I don't like what you're saying, therefore I'm going to say I'm offended, because then society dictates that you can't say the opposite of what I think, which is a very sort of self-centered viewpoint, I think. But
so being the term I'm offended, that's such a coarse, there's such coarse granularity there. It's not saying anything meaningful except this provoked a negative emotional reaction to me. That's essentially what being offended is, I feel, right? And it's like if you have to learn to articulate. It's like a little kid, bawling to their mom about, because, if a baby hurts, it just cries, right? It can't articulate, oh, I skinned my knee or whatever, right? Like, as adults, we should be able to articulate precisely what it is that we like or we don't like about what somebody said. And then we have to reconcile that with our personal beliefs about ourselves in the world. And we have to reconcile whether we're offended justly or we are just taking something a little too far, right? So we have to learn to precisely articulate our feelings about certain subjects. And we have to be able to say, this is how I feel. This is why I feel that way. This is the need that I have, such as respect or regard, that's not being met when I'm watching this, right? So somebody of a differently racial background than white might look at a Call of Duty game and say, this is really offensive to me. Right? And then they should be able to say why, right? Not that it's the onus upon them to justify being why they're offended, but to say, because it's like, it's easy to dismiss people who say they're offended as being overly sensitive. Right? Yeah,
absolutely. Definitely. And there's a really good point in the chat I was just reading that was saying that it's very often a case of that you just feel afraid of offending people as well. It can work both ways. They're just having a sort of discussion on chat about that, and I find that interesting. So it's a case of dealing with it politely as well. There was a comment in the chat. I don't know who it was from, but I just saw it as we were talking, and it just basically said that it's also about when you do disagree, you don't do it in a dick way. You don't do it in troll-like way. You don't say what you believe in is stupid and you should go fuck yourself or whatever it is. No, you.
The way I like to put it is disagreeing without being disagreeable. That's the way I like to hear it put. Personally.
Exactly. Yeah. Definitely.
And I believe that's what I say in my Twitch chat rules as well. I specifically address that because I want to do a brief dip into the community that has seemingly spontaneously formed around the Twitch streams of myself and my sister, and say that there's many people of many different backgrounds that all manage to get along well, and certainly they can't agree on everything, right?
Yeah,
but
definitely.
if you do say, you ask yourself the question, is my disagreement pertinent to anything right now?
Yeah.
Is it important? And how do I frame my disagreement in such a way that is sensitive to other people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's critical. It's critical for forming communities, right, that are not toxic.
Yeah, I think it. The way that I have read about it is that, like, having us reaching the level of acceptance for the person you're talking to, and having that ability to do that, by seeing how offended someone gets and going, right, I'll phrase it the way that I know I'm not going to offend them, but I'm still going to get my point across. And that's really hard to do. That's really hard to do, because I think people do that in a very generic sense, but they don't do it in a kind of individual one as well. Like, they don't do it in each individual case, which I find very interesting. But there's a lot of questions. Sorry to interrupt you, Ryan, but there's a lot of questions, and I want to make sure I want to make sure we go through them.
It's just like last time, our discussion just turned into something that was free flowing and extemporaneous. So I do want to just take 1 minute here, and I want to just to follow up on our last point, is that the key
cool.
that we've been dancing around as the term that is seemingly a dirty word for many people, which is empathy, right?
Yeah.
Is being able to put yourself in the shoes of other people who are experiencing your output, or who are experiencing what it is that you're saying, right? And being able to think about how they, with their background and their experiences, would view that. And that's why I typically don't tell any sort of racial joke. I typically avoid things like fat jokes, that kind of thing. Is because you never know what struggles people are going through every single day of their life and what they've dealt with in the past. And people like to laugh at shit like trigger warnings, and it's just this big fucking bunch of bullshit around certain happenings in the game industry and the game community these days, which shall remain nameless for now.
Especially on a gaming oriented place.
where sensitivity is tantamount to being, a negative thing, right? And I want to recommend a book to everybody by Marshall Rosenberg, who recently died. It's in the past couple of weeks, called Nonviolent Communication. It's by Marshall Rosenberg.
Okay.
And that book is an excellent book about how to communicate in an empathic and compassionate manner towards your fellow human beings. And reading that, it is one of the books that has actually changed my life for the better. And having read it,
cool.
And I want to give a shout out to my friend and mentor Scott, who introduced me to it. It's been an invaluable tool for my own life, but I feel everybody would gain in picking up a copy and reading it and seeing if they have a similar switch flipping in their head as when I read it. And so that's the basis around how I attempt to communicate with people in a diverse environment where everybody has different experiences in life. And I want to try to find a place where I can speak to everybody individually and yet in a common way, so that we can share a common set of experiences as well. So John West, that is the book. Yes.
Excellent.
So check it out, guys.
Maybe that sounds great. I mean, definitely, that sounds awesome. It's kind of touching on what you said, because you mentioned your friends, and I know at the beginning of the podcast you mentioned about moving jobs and saying this is the last time before you move and stuff, and there was a question about how do you sort of view your career, which is an interesting one, because like what do you regard as like sort of progress as kind of, I'm paraphrasing the question that was on the chat, but that was basically it. And I'm interested, but the reason I want to ask that is because I remember in the last podcast you were kind of, I'm not really sure that you kind of like the word career, maybe that you kind of just do what you think means something to you.
I mean, it's let me think about how to put this. I do like the term career, and the reason why I like the term career, as opposed to jobs, series of jobs, right? Everybody should strive to have a career of some sort, because the word career implies a sort of teleology around it. And by teleology, I mean that you have a purpose and you have a design and you have an end to what it is your daily day-to-day activities, right? And so when I look at my career thus far, I have been proud of some aspects of it, and I've been not so proud of other aspects of it, right? Think of it as I would like to have actionable, reachable, meaningful goals that change the environment that I'm in for the better. And that's what I've come to look at in terms of when I decide what job to go for and a job to get.
Mm-hmm.
So in the job that I'm starting on Monday, I'm working with somebody who I respect and admire very much, who's I see as a mentor to myself. I'm going to be working directly alongside him to do actionable, very specific, reachable, important goals that are important company-wide at the CEO level of the company.
Mm-hmm.
And that achievement will make me very, very proud because I can look back upon the state that I joined the company in. And when I complete that task, I can look at the state that the company is in at that time I complete the task.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can look and I say, what do I have more to do in this environment?
Yeah.
And hopefully there are more specific, reachable goals that I can be proud of after that. And then you start to reach for that. But what you don't want, or what I don't want to ever happen to myself, is to get into the position where I'm just working, going to work on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, looking forward to Friday. And then I go into work on Friday, looking forward to 2 days of the week when I'm not at work, right? And then I'm just living for a paycheck. That's what I want to avoid in my life. And so you always join a company because a company has, at least in my career, I'm talking software engineering. This is the career that I am talking about right now. You guys out there who have different careers, maybe you can word this differently for yourself, or maybe you're just not interested. But speaking for myself in the software engineering career, a company will acquire you because a requirement has opened up for a position, usually because there are specific achievable goals involved. And then after those goals are done, you just start kind of milling about. You start maintaining software. You start kind of slipping down into things where you're not striving forward for personal goals. And that's the danger zone. That's when you have to look for another job, another career, or the next step in your career to reach slightly higher.
Yeah, I often have that conversation with a bunch of people, not just people I interview on the podcast, but like obviously my friends and in my regular life, is that it's a question of, do you do something for the sake of picking up a paycheck and be satisfied with that? Or like you're saying, which is, that's one of the reasons I set up a company, is that you want to do something where you feel that you have a direct correlation between what you do and the achievement that happens within the company. Because if you're in a big, huge company corporation, and I've worked for several, is that you find yourself not feeling that what you're doing is just kind of like working as a worker, doing whatever it is that you can possibly do to get through the day and to complete that task, but you don't feel any sort of fulfillment. And I think really this is what we're talking about, is the fulfillment of an individual and an individual's goals is what is far much more important for a person's happiness and everything else. And that seems to be what you're doing.
It's different for everybody. Like let me table that for a second, and let me say that you have to look at yourself now, and you have to be honest about the current state of your life, right? And then you have to say, what's the next step for me personally, right? Do I want to be better talking to groups of people, right? Do I want to be better individually on a one-on-one level, right? And then you have to be looking, how do I improve myself? And your career should be a vehicle through which you improve yourself in your life. And let me make an analogy. And I would say, so let's say that I'm on a television show, right? And the first 3 or 4 seasons are fucking awesome, right? Is that my character develops, my character experiences gains and losses, and my character shames himself, and my character redeems himself, and I'm just this dynamic, changing character, right? And then season 5 hits, and my character just hits a slump, and it never changes, right? The character just stopped changing. Maybe the writing team changed, right? But the character is just, I'm phoning in the same stale jokes and the same stale character week after week on the show. It's time for my character to get killed off, and it's time for me to find a new television show, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's why, maybe make a comparison to a movie where I'm playing a completely different character every movie that goes through this whole cycle of, gain and loss and shame and redemption every movie. And then I move on to the next movie, and I'm this different character who's doing a different role, but with the same cycle. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do totally understand what you're saying. Yeah, it's a bit like a person who, I've interviewed several actors in my time, and I often see there's an example of there was one I saw on YouTube with Brent Spiner, who Data in Star Trek Next Generation, and it really annoyed me because he got a lot of flack for this on the internet, which who doesn't, but he basically got asked a question in a convention of, what's the very generic, what's it like playing Data?
Yeah.
And he answered it in a very sort of like irritated manner of, I've been asking this question, I've been answering this question for 25 years. There was a very famous interview that got a lot of exposure over here with Christine Guru Murphy, who's a presenter on Channel 4, interviewed Quentin Tarantino and asked him about the violence question, and it got viral on the internet because he said, "So what do you think about violence in films?" And he's like, "I'm not answering that question," and he gets really knocked about it. And he basically says, "Well, look at all the interviews I've done over the last 25 years. My opinion has not changed, so I'm not answering that." And he got a lot of people went, "Oh, he's annoying people." So I guess what I'm saying is along the lines of what you were saying is that, if you're enjoying what you're doing, then just then continue to do it. Then continue to do it regardless of how it's perceived or whatever or anything like that. As long as you feel the fulfillment inside. But I guess the downside of when you do something like you're saying, as long as that, is that you get the downtime of people going, "Why you keep doing this? Why aren't you doing something else?" Or
if you're good, then I'm good, right? If you're good, you're good. But you have to be honest with yourself, and you have to chart that. Am I really happy? Like, am I really fulfilling myself in this job? Am I really reaching important goals for myself, or am I just treading water? Am I just feeding? Am I just working to make sure that I have a roof over my head and food in my belly? And that's important. Those things are incredibly important. Right?
Yeah, definitely.
But you also have to actualize. You have to actualize yourself. You have to fulfill your emotional and mental and intellectual goals as well as your physical needs.
Yeah,
you have to have a sense of belonging, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have to have a sense of actualization.
Yeah, I saw Toronto Girl on chat was saying a very good point about emotions, is that people are just afraid of tackling their emotions at all, and like you're saying, they'll look at the physical symptoms of something and go, "I'm going to deal with my body first," but not thinking about the mind as well, which is quite an interesting point. Yeah. I want to crowbar in a question because it's very similar to what we're talking about.
No, we haven't addressed any questions.
I know, yeah. Well, it's okay. We've got plenty of time. We've got plenty of time. It's all good. I'm not doing anything, so it's all good. Because I mean, I think me and you're mine. I should point out at this point, because I was streaming Bloodborne before we started this, and we had a few people from TeamHuman on the chat, so I was chatting to them.
Awesome.
And we were saying that your podcast last year for us was the third most downloaded. I was saying how surprised I was, considering I'm a UK-based place, but it kind of shows the power really of the internet and everything else. And but we were talking about obviously not just that, but also it was the longest podcast I ever did. I think it was
It was a marathon, dude. You were up to like 4 a.m. or something. Because we started at like 7 p.m. my time, and it was already like the wee hours of the morning.
Yeah, I think it was like 1. Yeah, it was like 1 or something.
A heroic effort on your part.
Yeah, it was awesome though. It was really fun. But yeah, it was in my own parents' house as well. Yeah, God, that's how long ago it was. I'm in my own place now. But yeah, but anyway, I wanted to crowbar in this question because it was in relation to fulfillment and very other things. And Paul Perez, which is at post I don't know how to say that, at post at East. I don't know. I'm sure he can correct me on that. But with the use of Homan as an example, is having your idiom taking up a community better than being recognized? Which I think is a really great question.
Can you clarify that question? I actually saw that question on Twitter. I thought it was very interesting, but I couldn't piece together quite what it meant.
I think what he's saying is the way I took it. I don't know whether he's right. I think he's in the chat, so you might want to elaborate. If you're in the chat, please let us know. But what I think he was mentioning was, it's a bit like if you have a community that follows your stuff, is that better than just being recognized by being famous? I suppose I think that's how I took it, as like you're part of a community that likes what you do, as opposed to just being famous sake. you know, look, there's Ryan in the street,
Mhm.
as opposed to having a community that goes, I like your stuff, which I think is a complete. I like what you do, and I like the stuff. I like the content you provide. I think that was the angle he was looking at. I may be wrong. He is in the
Yeah.
chat, so do you want to correct? If he wants to correct me, but do you want to answer my
I mean, let's think about this for a second. I mean, it. I would rather. I don't know. Being famous probably kind of sucks.
Especially like the top rated the top rated famous people. Yeah,
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, he's just commented back saying, yeah, that's what he meant. So
Okay,
yeah,
so
it's good.
Explain it to me. Explain it to me one more time.
I think what it's the way that I see it.
What mental block I have on this.
That's fine. Okay, I'll what I was thinking as I read the question was a bit like, and I know I might get some stick for this because obviously they've got a huge following, but like it's a bit like the Paris Hilton, let's say. You can argue that she has very little talent other than selling herself for having a talent.
I would take issue with that, but yeah, sure.
I'm not saying this is my opinion. I'm not saying this is my opinion. I'm just saying one can assert that that's the.
That's a popular opinion, yes.
Yeah, it's a popular opinion, exactly, yeah. So I'm saying, for example, some would say, oh, well, I just want to get famous by having my own reality show. Like, I know you used to have Jersey Show over here. Well, they did a version of that in Newcastle, where I'm from, in England, where they did Geordie Show. And that has a very stereotypical, terrible viewpoint of, and majority of people in Newcastle do not like it because...
What are English douchebags like? Like, I know what American douchebags are like.
Just incredibly vain.
Is there like a common thread between douchebaggery in different cultures? I wonder. I don't know, but anyway. I don't
really think we kind of call people douchebags over here. I regard that as a very Americanized term, but I don't know whether I'm.
Cultural exchange time. What's the English UK version of douchebag?
I don't know. I mean,
is it tosser?
Oh, there's tosser. Yeah, there's the tosser's a phrase. Yeah. I would call someone a tosser if I didn't like them. Yeah, so I suppose yeah. But do you have such a thing as chavs over there? Do you know what chavs are?
No, but I remembered asking on a channel like what's the difference, because there's people like from Scotland and there's people from like Finland. I was like, what's your local version of like redneck? And I think chav came up as the English version of like redneck.
Yeah, it's kind of like, well, like over here there's like the definition, what I would define as a chav over here, which is basically kind of like someone who dresses in sort of burgundy clothing, which is kind of and kind of just walks like Liam Gallagher from Oasis or something, just kind of like he's got holding two deck chairs, he's got his arms out and he's like got his. It's a shame the webcam's not working because I actually did do the walk while I was explaining it there, just imagine, but yeah, so they're they're incredibly rude, they're rough, they're very often found in rough neighborhoods, all right. And I regard that as kind of, but douchebags.
That's the thing. See, douchebags are often affluent. That's the thing about douchebags is that douchebags are unempathetic and they have like a very black and white view of the world. Like generally douchebags are pretty privileged. Okay, so Zazu80, who's a fixture in my Twitch streams, has clarified the question and said, do I like the smaller human community to follow all the stuff better than just being famous to many people? Absolutely.
That's basically it, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because like I have said in the past couple of podcasts, I've formulated it as that my life gains a great deal of its meaning from being of service to other people, and fame for the sake of being famous for me would be not just a neutral, but also a detriment to me, I feel.
I guess it's sort of like you were touching on it just to kind of help you along, is that you were touching on, it's a bit like sort of, if you have, let's say for argument's sake, let's put a random number of like 20 million Twitter followers, let's say. How many?
Okay. Let me clarify this more, because Weeping
Okay.
Termite in my channel just said, quote, well, with Twitch, the viewers are part of the content and it's a group effort.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So that is the important thing, is that there is an interlocking series of two-way communication where we're communicating with each other, and the content is formed dynamically through the interaction between the streamer and the audience.
Exactly.
And that is what thrills me the most about being on Twitch, and why I find it such an engrossing platform.
Yeah.
That I can just watch certain streamers for a long time, because everything is flowing and dynamic and fluid, and the conversation and gameplay can change according to the viewer inputs, and that's something that you do not see in scripted format. So yeah, I feel really good about a hashtag having been formed around a one-off joke that I made in a Twitch stream that my sister did. And the fact that it's taken on not only a life of its own, but that it's taken on a life of its own that is incredibly positive and nurturing and inclusive, which is something that I feel incredibly good about.
It's amazing.
Over anything else.
Yeah, definitely. As you were talking there, I was thinking of several examples from my podcast. For example, like I get emails from people saying, and I never even was aware I did this, but it was a long-running joke that I say other products are available whenever I mention a product, like just jokingly. And people have started hashtagging that in my emails and stuff in my community, and it's just, and I never even was aware I did it, but now I kind of feel like I have to do it just to kind of be funny. In any podcast, when I just go, if I mention like my internet provider, I go, oh, the internet providers are available, even though it makes very little difference, it actually, there's no real issue doing that anyway.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about, because obviously, I've talked to people from this group, so can you explain, because obviously there'll be listeners on my end who don't know how this got developed, but how did TeamHuman start?
Man, I mean, so I think this started around Halloween, maybe Halloween or shortly after. My sister and I did a Twitch stream. It was one of our first ones, actually.
Yeah.
So we played it's
a horror game, wasn't it? Yeah.
We played a horror game called. Everyone's gonna have to help me out here. It was a horror game, and it's a multiplayer horror game. And essentially, there's a monster, and then the monster tries to hunt down the human players, and the human players try to escape from the map. And there's always a bunch of keys hidden around everywhere, and a bunch of combination codes hidden around everywhere, so that eventually people try to reach the escape room before the monster kills all of the humans, right? And so it was my turn to be the monster to hunt down people, and I just made up this kind of, as somebody's put it, I forget who, fey German voice, and I started calling, like, I'm a monster and I'm trying to like talk to the humans instead of humans, right? Like and in my mind, it was the monster, not understanding humanity and thinking that it would legit get humans to come see him, right? Like this like a stupid monster, this will work for sure. Like I sound like a human, so they're gonna come see me, right? And so I just started wandering around the map, calling them to me, and that's like this voice. And so people apparently latched onto it, and that's how the thing got formed. And then my sister wore a shirt with this really loud shirt with raccoons on it one day in her stream, and so then they adopted a raccoon as the totem animal or the symbol for the overall hashtag. And what's so cool about this, Zazu80, who is German, legit takes offense at my claim that it was German voice, but I didn't call it that. Zazu, I did not call it that. I was quoting somebody, so I have that shield. I'm using them as a shield. And so what is especially cool about this is that the way that it has dynamically formed and taken shape due to no particular guidance from myself or my sister. And the only way that I would wish to guide this is to guide it again in the form of being further more inclusive, further into being more compassionate, empathic, and understanding, especially towards those people who have traditionally felt excluded from these sorts of online gaming and geekdom communities. That is kind of the thing that I am most proud about in terms of having, again, a part made, or rather having taken a part and having formed it. And what I'm most proud about is that I am apparently, for whatever reason, and my sister apparently for whatever reason, have acted in such a way, and the community has acted in such a way, that we're attracting more of those sorts of people and fewer douchebags and tossers and shafts.
And shavs, yeah. And tossers and
tossers, yeah.
Yeah,
So
and the C word. I don't know how you feel about the C word, but yeah.
I said it on stream in my channel, and I was very embarrassed.
Yeah.
As I said, no matter how much you like somebody or something, there's things that are problematic about it.
Yeah.
And it's hard to escape having been raised as a heterosexual white dude.
Yeah.
In the United States, you have certain attributes inculcated into you, and then you realize later on that these things are wrong, and you try to eject them from yourself, but remnants of them remain. And so the C word is used very differently here in the United States when you compare it to how it's used in the UK. So I tend not to say it.
It's almost a compliment over here. You're such a...
Hug to All has a really good question. Oops, fuck me to tears. Okay, I thought I closed my chat window, but I didn't. Hug to All has this, how do I evaluate a cause/charity to invest for your Twitch? That's a good question. Well, we can cover that a little later, I think, when we go on more like, so let me paste that into the Sublime text. So I remember Nowhere Here had some really good questions on Twitter that I actually wanted to address, if that's cool.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I just was looking at it now.
I think I marked down 2 of his questions in particular because I had a really cool conversation.
Yeah, you got them. Are you got them on? Because I don't think I have them here.
Oh, I don't. Yeah. I'm searching through my Twitter real quick for them because they were very insightful. I wish that I pasted them.
Yeah, I thought I'd pasted them as well, but apparently I haven't. While we're looking at that, I'll tell you what, I'll look for it and I'll ask you a question at the same time. But because I want to ask you about, because I watched your Divinity stream and I really enjoyed it. I think he's a great streamer. But you know that anyway, because I was a huge fan of Co-optitude.
Excellent.
What intrigued me, and I almost went and got a bottle, was your Scotch. Your Scotch addiction, and I don't mean that. I mean you're loosely saying that. I'm not claiming that, but
sure.
But yeah,
expert in the loosest sense of the term, the most not unexpert sense of the term.
Yeah, but how did that come about in terms of incorporating it into the game? I tell you what,
Tyson, you want to paste your 2 questions in chat. So there was one about like where I wanted to see the industry going that dovetailed very beautifully into things that I would like to talk about. I just can't find them on your fucking Twitter stream because there's a lot of stuff that is not what I'm looking for specifically.
Yeah, I wish I remember what they were now because I thought I'd pasted them.
There are 2 really good questions. All right. Anyway, so what was your question, dude?
It was about your Scotch involvement in your Twitch stream when you play. Okay. You have Scotch, yeah.
Specifically, what about it?
Just how did it come about, and why did you sort of incorporate it into it? Did it just happen accidentally, or?
It was one of those things, man. The genesis of this also arises from the Damned stream, which is the name of the game we were playing when I coined the term human, right? I just happened to have a bottle of Scotch with me, and I just decided to make a gag out of it, like I was to act as if I was endorsing this Scotch, like I was being paid for it. And so I just had a stock phrase that I would bring up as often as I could about this Scotch called Edredauer, which I pronounced incorrectly in the first place. I pronounced it as Edredor, and it's actually Edredauer. Okay. And then it's like the smallest distillery in Scotland, like it's some sort of tagline, which it is for the brand, but they don't pay me or give me free Scotch.
You accept Scottish. You accept a Scotch person. Oh my God, how are you still alive?
I know, man. I've been
Angie near a window. I'm worried for you.
So it got a really positive reaction, and I really like Scotch, and so I used it as an excuse to buy a lot of Scotch.
Fair enough.
So, it just became a fixture because people seem to enjoy it, and I enjoy Scotch, and I enjoy talking. Yeah. And I enjoy talking about Scotch. So it seemed a natural intersection between my interest in talking a lot and my interest in Scotch and my interest in streaming. And people are pasting the emote in my stream right now.
Excellent. I found the questions that we were looking for, by the way.
Excellent. Yes.
From Tyson.
So Scotch is yummy. If you don't like Scotch, then maybe you should consider giving it another shot.
Definitely. Do you have a particular favorite, or is that too difficult to say?
Oh, I mean, as JCVIM's dad says, who's Scottish, and who kind of got me into some rudimentary knowledge thanks to some time he spent with me and some friends, some other like Anna Magus and Small Blue Square and Lexical Unit. What time of day is it? What time of day is it? It depends. You don't want a really heavy scotch in the morning. So
9:30 with one of them plastic cups and at a bus stop.
Yeah, if it's time for then maybe something light like an Auchentoshan, right? If it's right before bedtime, maybe something peaty and smoky.
I wouldn't be surprised if like fast food chains start giving that an option or something. Who knows?
Who knows, man?
If they know what to sell.
Hopefully not to the drive-through.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Do you have drive-throughs? You don't have drive-throughs there, do you?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
You do? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. In the chain restaurants that you have, obviously, all the ones that I can mention them, but you'll know what I'm referring to. Yeah, no, we have drive-throughs. I think it took a little bit longer to come over here, but yeah, it's quite common now. So basically, you don't even have to get out of your car. As a famous comedian in England said, you can pretty much do anything in your car now without having to leave it, which I find quite funny.
It's true.
So yeah, these questions from TysonRoll86, which is what,
yes.
And I did favourite them, so that's why I managed to find them. The first question is, where do you see the geek community as a whole going, and where would you like to see it to go?
I think that this is such a great question, and again, I'm gonna probably offend some people, and hopefully I don't get a SWAT team sent to my house, but okay, so let me just say right now, I'm just gonna say something just completely off the wall.
Mm-hmm.
The geek community is just pure shit, and I mean that in the lovingest possible way, because if I didn't care, then I wouldn't say anything about it.
Yeah.
Right. But for a bunch of people who claim to have been picked on a lot in high school, and who claim to have be victimized by more popular people when they were younger, they're the most non-inclusive people who I've seen. And again, these are the loud people. That's the qualification that I want to make to that statement. These are the loud people, right? So where I see it is a bunch of people who are lacking empathy, and a bunch of people who are very frightened that their toy is going to be taken away from them. And they're very scared about that, and so they're pushing back in inappropriate ways against efforts to have more inclusivity in the community.
Definitely.
That's where I see it right now. I'm just going to be blunt, and I'm going to say it. I got to say that people are afraid that they're going to have their toys taken away, and so they're throwing a tantrum trying to keep possession of their toy.
The byproduct of that is people who aren't in the geek community as well are fighting back, thinking that's what people want. If you see what I mean, like if you have people who are afraid of taking something away, the other side of that think, oh well, they're going to take what we care about as well. So you have this natural fight, or this unnatural fight, obviously, because it's not really natural. But you find that it creates an even bigger gap between the people who aren't part of the geek community and the people who are. And I agree with you to a certain extent. I definitely agree.
Yeah, and to people from outside of the geek community. Because there are people who are entrenched in the geek community, and there are people who are on the margins of the geek community, and there are people who are not in the geek community who are outside looking in.
Yes.
And so if you're a part of this latter group, the people who are outside looking in, who are curious about what all this cosplay stuff is about, okay, you're somebody on the outside who's looking in, who sees a bunch of hunky guys and pretty girls dressing up in characters from video games, and then you see this explosion of invective and hatred against these people for being fake geeks.
Yeah.
They're like, wow, geeks are assholes, right? If you like to dress up in costumes, fuck, go for it, man.
Yeah.
And then they're saying, wow,
I hate the phrase, you're not geeky enough. Do you ever get that?
Yeah, so here's the ironic thing. Wow, you geeks sure are intolerant. Wow, can you imagine that? Wow, geeks sure are intolerant. I mean, imagine that from geeks who are like having been put upon for their interests all their lives from people who are intolerant of those interests. People who have those interests are rather intolerant themselves. Wow, how can that be?
Yeah.
I mean, is that what you want to be? Right? And then you have the people who are on the margins of geekdom, right? So people of color, women, other minorities, who have been underrepresented in the medium. In a way, they're on the outside looking in too, right?
Yeah.
So then you have the people who are core, right? people who, okay, let's say heterosexual white dudes again, all right, who probably couldn't have, like me, who couldn't have picked up a girl if she had handles.
Would you want to pick her up if she had handles? I don't know.
So,
oh dear.
and so they have this. So people. Okay, so to be fair, E. Fletcher, 1980, says elitism and fanaticism are toxic in every community. Absolutely, but what I'm talking about is geekdom right now, and you have to take a long, hard look at yourself, because what you do is, as you grow up, you form a mythology about yourself. You have a life story that you tell about yourself, right? And the life story that geeks have told about themselves is that they are a put-upon minority who have managed to somehow carve out intimacy amongst like-minded individuals using in a medium, using mediums such as role-playing games, such as anime, such as comic books, such as fanfics, such as video games that the rest of the world didn't mesh with.
Yeah.
And so you look at that and say, wow, we were not appreciated for who we were by the other people in our communities and the people who were supposed to be our peers but who shunned us.
Yeah.
And so now I have a bunch of people who think, look, and act, talk like me. This is my community.
Yeah.
And now look, there's a bunch of people from the outside who are trying to co-opt what is mine.
Yeah.
And so now I'm being victimized by having things that I enjoy being taken away from me. Holy shit, a woman Thor. Holy fuck, a black Captain America, right? What is this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, look, man.
Look, this is not good.
You're displaying the same lack of tolerance and empathy that other people once displayed towards you. This is severely problematic.
Mm-hmm.
And so where I see the geek community right now is this, Tyson. I see the geek community in a place where it is on the cusp of changing in very positive ways, and that there is severe amount of pushback and a severe amount of attempted recidivism, or not recidivism, but antediluvianism, if that's even a word.
Yeah.
From people who are fearful of change, who see themselves as victims, who see themselves as having more to lose than to gain from this change.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm here to say that there is far more to lose than gain if you manage to beat back, to use probably what these people are thinking.
Yeah.
There's more to lose than to gain by refusing this attempted inclusivity and attempted diversification of this community. There's far more to lose than gain.
I really, it's really interesting you say that, because actually, funnily enough, I'm part of a really big board game community, probably the biggest in Newcastle, and I was at an event last night, and there's an example of that I'd like to share, which is exactly on your point, which is basically that you find, people, board games as a prime example, and tabletop's a huge proprietor of that, of including people who might not necessarily have either fell out in love with board games, didn't know these type of board games existed, and are including and bringing families together. The downside of that is I see families more at these events than ever before, at least in our city, and I'm assuming it's like that everywhere else. I've been to board game conventions in the UK, and it's like that. Families are going to conventions more than ever before, but you still get, to your point, the sort of snobberish geek who is afraid of that, who feels like they're raining on their parade. And not only that, but they make it a shit experience for anyone who's ever around them, because they go, it is the alpha male attitude of, if I'm not going to enjoy the game the way I want to, then no one will. And it's the same in any form. And you find that that's not really in reference to what they're doing, the board game or whatnot. It is an aspect of their personality that they're not aware that they're doing. And it really annoys me, because the example we had yesterday was we played a game and we involved one of my friends' kids, and it was almost like kids are playing in an environment that I want to be in, and I want to have everything go my way, and I'm like, but we're trying to include everybody in this, and who cares if it's the geek community or whatever? I know we're talking about the geek community, but who cares if it's anything, if it's about any community, it's about including people, not making it an exclusive thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem, is that people are going, well, it's now an exclusive thing because everyone knows about it. I'm going to keep it that way rather than including people in that circle, which I find
Absolutely
very dangerous. Yeah. I find it's a very dangerous attitude to have.
No, and moreover, it's like, what do you have to lose, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, people drink PBR, which is a really shitty beer here in the United States, Pabst Blue Ribbon, right? People drink it and people enjoy it, and good on you, man. They're not going to stop making Scotch because people enjoy PBR, man, right?
No, of course not.
Like, I'm going to enjoy my Scotch and you're going to enjoy your PBR. If you enjoy it on alcoholic beverages on a more casual level than I do, and you don't like buying special glasses for your shit, and you don't like buying $80 bottles of alcohol beverage, right? Fuck, I don't care, man. It doesn't take anything away from my enjoyment to have you enjoy something on a slightly more casual level that I don't personally like, right? And so what you're doing is you're doing two things, right? You are retarding your own growth as a person by behaving in the way that you're describing, right? You're retarding your own growth as a person, right? Mm-hmm. You are hurting what you love by trying to prevent it from reaching a wider audience. You're preventing its growth, right?
Yep.
And you're just being a piece of shit. There.
Yeah, pretty much.
You're being an asshole.
Kind of a good way of summing that up, really. Yeah, you're just being an asshole. Stop being an asshole.
I mean, imagine if you went to college, and there were no survey courses for people who weren't majors in that. Like, I don't want to be an astronomy major, but I want to learn as much as I can while I'm at university about astronomy, given that I'm studying computer science. So there's survey course, right? It's just going to lightly touch on the surface aspects of, astronomy and the life cycle of stars and, all that shit, right? Like, imagine if all the astronomy students were like, "You piece of shit, why are you taking a survey course? You don't deserve to know this much about astronomy," right? That's the same thing, right? Like, I fucking hate Settlers of Catan, but it warms my heart when I see people playing Settlers of Catan because they're playing board games, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Great point. There's a guy in our board game club that I absolutely detest who goes around the games, like deliberately gets out of the game he's playing, goes to another table. Like, we were playing Star Trek Catan not too long ago.
Yeah.
And
that's a good variant of Catan.
I personally prefer it, but I know
it does fix a lot of the things that I hate about Catan. So
yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so I was sitting there playing it, and he got out of his chair in the game he was playing, came over because we were laughing and joking and having a really good time, and because the board game brings people together. That's the more, in my opinion, the most important thing. It doesn't really matter what game it is, but the fact that he came over to stop us in the middle of what we were talking about to go, "Why are you playing this? Why are you playing this? This doesn't, this. What an awful game." So he got out of his truck. That's deliberately going out of his way to be a dick, which is even worse than just being a dick without even realizing. He's deliberately doing that. He's doing that with a purpose in mind, to make people feel bad about something they care about. I fucking hate Battlestar Galactica. I don't know if you ever played that board game, but I detest it. I absolutely hate it. It's so fucking dull.
It's definitely it's definitely. Those Ameritrash games are definitely contentious.
Yeah.
The only time I've had fun playing BSG is when I'm role playing. If you role play during the game, it's actually pretty fun. But other than
I can imagine. Yeah.
It's kind of a poopy game.
Yeah. It's jump, go to a different area of the ship. Jump, go to a different area of the ship. Cylons come in. It's just 2 hours of the same turn, really. But
that's where the geek community is. The geek community is on
the
cusp. Yeah, the geek community is on the cusp of change.
Yes.
Right, and there's a certain subset of the community that's vociferously against this change, and they are very, very loud, and they are very, very fierce, and they're holding back the evolution of what they love, which is the ironic thing, right? It's like being static is never good for anything. Being dynamic is very, very good, and eventually things are going to change whether they like it or not. So they might as well embrace it and be known for being inclusive rather than for being one of those people who show up in history books, notable only for having been in the way of progress. Mm-hmm. Why would you want to be that? Why would you want to be known for being a dead ender?
Yeah.
Right. So the second part of the question is, where would I like to see the geek community be?
Yeah.
Well, it's the exact opposite, man. right? I would like to see it be more inclusive and opening and welcoming and warm to people of all stripes.
Yeah.
You know, of all shapes, colors, creed, everything.
Yeah.
And to be more welcoming and accepting and compassionate. That's what I would like to see.
Yeah.
Because events as of late have made the geek community, specifically video gaming, to look terrible to everybody who is peripherally involved or not involved, is on the outside looking in.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these movements have done more to harm the evolution and the acceptance of these hobbies into mainstream culture than anything else, right? If you don't let mainstream culture in, right, the majority of the world isn't white and male, right?
Definitely,
the majority of the world isn't even male.
Yeah, yeah.
And yet, why do we have underrepresentation of 52% of the population in this country?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. Yeah,
percent women, right?
Yeah, well, we have a girl.
Here's another thing.
Yeah, sorry.
Is you are actively harming the profitability of the creators of the content.
Yeah.
Because why would you not want people and comic book creators and companies who have very low margins on comic books? You sell like 50,000 copies of a comic.
Yeah, yeah.
Why would you not want them to broaden the possible demographic appeal of their product?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Why would you want to keep them from growing as companies? Right?
Because it could lead to the potential of getting more content, which is what you want as well.
What you want, exactly. Yeah. So that's what I would want to see. I would want to see inclusive, empathic communication. I wanted to see a more variety of protagonists and antagonists in all these mediums. I would like to see more creativity because, you know, studies have shown that just in the workplace, just if you talk about employees at a company doing tasks, that more diverse teams work better together to solve problems.
Yeah.
It's been proven to be factual. And the more different ideas and perspectives you have in a community, the more different ideas are constantly colliding as people communicate and interact, the more creativity abounds and burgeons, and the more superior products and the more evolution that your products have.
Yeah,
the more
definitely.
Community grows, flourishes, and diversifies, and the better it gets. Mm-hmm. Invariably, the better that it gets.
I would also I think for my two cents to put in as well, I think they're all great points you make, and I definitely think the sub point of what you just said is that also it leads to the mainstream media crowbarring in like a small article of like someone losing their temper or somebody making content that they don't like, and then showcasing it as the whole thing, but not just that. There's some geeks who do that with their own content in the own geek community who'll look at a particular thing of someone having a bad day or whatever it is, not being having the empathy like you were talking about, spending all your time talking about the negative aspect of things and reinforcing what mainstream media think of geeks in general. So it's a full circle attitude, and it reinforces the stereotype of what we're trying to break down. So yeah, I totally agree with you.
All I can say is that there's an old saying, is that some people would rather be right than be happy.
Yeah.
Right?
Good point.
And it's like, yeah, okay, you're so right. Well, so what? You know, you're making yourself angry and miserable by constantly focusing on your own fear of having your toys being taken away, when you could just accept things and be a happier, more fulfilled person. Instead, you're keeping yourself in the same place you've always been. Small, scared, and huddled, and an increasingly small shadow of what your community once was compared to what it's becoming, is that you are compressing yourself into an infinitesimally small point to fit into the shadow, right, of what the sun of diversity is casting onto this object. And you're just trying to fit in the shadow of what once was, and it's sad. Yeah. And I think that this is an entirely different but connected problem with sexism in video games, and we can talk about that as well, and that's another huge problem, right?
I was just going to mention that we have in the podcast in a couple of weeks a friend of mine who works for Ubisoft, and she works in the Ubisoft, one of the biggest Ubisoft production places is in Newcastle, because it used to be the people who made Driver, I think it's Revolution Studios or something like that, the people who made the Driver games. And Ubisoft took over that studio, and she works there, and I've had conversations with her about that very subject, because not only is being a video gamer, I know your sister Felicia has problems with this all the time, is not only with playing games, but making games as well, which is a whole different avenue. Is that you can't. It's very difficult to get a job in the gaming industry, but if you're a woman as well, you're unfairly scrutinized for being a woman who likes video games. It's just bizarre.
You gotta work twice as hard to get half as much, praise
reward,
and recognition.
Yeah.
I want to go on. Oh yeah, well let me touch on one more thing, right?
Yeah, cool.
Is that this is particularly virulent in the area of video games, right?
Yeah.
So let's take the newest example.
Yeah.
Is the South Korean Hearthstone player who is female, and people, because she was doing well, people tried to say that she was having a guy play for her. And it was this huge scandal.
Yeah, I think I heard of this.
Gigantic scandal.
Yeah.
You can look it up. It was the most sickening thing, and this is what women in video games have to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so much. There's so many. It's exhausting thinking about all the separate problems, right? Fucking dick wolves. The enforcer at PAX who was stalking Brianna Wu and tweeting murder stuff. The PAX enforcer who was doing this.
I remember reading that and being disgusted. Yeah, I remember reading that. Yeah.
And I'm probably gonna get some flack about saying these things, but I don't give a fuck. At the end of the day, I have a well-paying job that's not, I can afford to talk about this. No one's going to do anything to me.
Mm-hmm.
No official statement about it at all.
Mm-hmm.
Right? One of the enforcers at PAX tweeting murder jokes about Brianna Wu.
Yeah.
Fuck, man, what the fuck? What is wrong with these people, right? The South Korean Hearthstone player. She's a girl and she's doing well on the ladder, so she must have a guy playing for her, right? Let's see here. The list goes on. Creepy people at cons groping cosplay girls, right?
Yeah.
And pushback against codes of conduct at cons.
Yeah.
The list goes on, and racism is awful. Sexism is awful. And I would say that the most visible is an overt problem is sexism, and that the racism is more insidious because it's just as bad, but it's probably more subtle in terms of the expression of racism.
Yeah.
But sexism is just overt. We're talking some 1950s Mad Men shit, dude. Like this is like you step foot into geekdom and it's like you're in 1950, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely sickening.
Yeah. I wanted to. There's a phrase of the Bill. I'm a huge fan of Bill Maher, and I watch his program on the Real Time with Bill Maher, and he made a really great point about racism. Because he mentioned when Donald Trump got into some sort of trouble about making some sort of passing racist remark, and it was to do with Obama's birth certificate. Basically asking for Obama as a birth certificate, and Bill Maher said the problem with racism, and he referred to sexism as well, and very pretty much spot on with your point, is that racism is the problem we have now is people who are overtly racist, as in people who don't know they're racist, who are being racist. That's what it's led to, because people there's enough of people against it.
Like, I've got black friends. I'm not racist.
Yeah.
Right? Again, this circle. You have black friends who think you're kind of an asshole, but are still willing to give you another chance. That's what that means.
Yeah.
Right. There's a set of black people who think you're kind of a dick, but you have some redeeming characteristics. But they're not going to broach you about your problematic behavior because you respond to it by saying, "I've got black friends." You're the kind of person who says, "But I've got black friends." You need to stop before you say that and examine yourself closely. Right. I know I say and do problematic things unconsciously. I know it. And every day I think about it. Every day I try to analyze that part of myself to see where I'm coming from and what I can do to do better tomorrow. This circles back around where we're saying there's this defensiveness in people.
Yeah.
And they don't want to be called out. They don't want to think about themselves not being just right the way they are.
Yeah.
And so they'll go to extreme lengths to avoid any sort of deep self-analysis about what they say or how they act or what they do. And there's no shame in admitting that you're wrong. And there's no shame in being bad at things.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no shame in expressing the parts of you that you unconsciously have been inculcated with through the way that you were raised in the communities that you are.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know any better. But what's shameful is your lack of ability and willingness to pursue growth and change.
Yeah.
That is directly correlated to this kind of casual racism. It's directly correlated to the sexism in geekdom. It's directly correlated to all the problems that these self-professed true geeks have with their community evolving and changing. Is this lack of willingness to closely examine yourself.
Yeah.
And to try to say, what can I do better?
Yeah, it's interesting because I know we can delve into this because I know that you are interested in this, because before we started the podcast I was telling Ryan about what issues I've been having, which is why I had a break from the podcast and whatnot. But yeah, we can talk about this much more at length later in regards to the way people, because what I was going to say was, whenever you are passionate and informed in an informed situation and want to say what your opinion is, you very often get people who refuse to see it from that perspective because they're told half truths and they're told not really facts about something, and kind of go, well, I got told this. I really get totally disillusioned with people who say, but I got told this, so it must be this, even though I'm telling them, giving them, or even showing them the information and showing what the real statistical facts are, and showing examples of where this happens, and going, but I heard this it's like whatever they hear first is what they think is right. Because and I just find that really bizarre, and ultimately it's your motivate. I guess it's your intent is the main thing. If you have an intent to hurt, then you're really not a nice person, and
that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's really what it comes down to. If you unintentionally hurt someone and are prepared to apologize for it and say, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that, it is really down to intent. This is why you can say, say even the most difficult jokes, and it's the intent.
And I want to say that's better, but that's not good enough. What the proper answer is.
Oh, yeah, correct.
It's not. It's right. You see where I'm going, right?
I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Is I apologize, and here's what I'm going to do better next time.
Yes.
And from now on.
I'm not going to make the same mistake again. Yeah.
Precisely. It's okay to fuck up. You just have to say, oh, I fucked up, and here's what went wrong, and here's what I'm going to do next time to prevent it from happening again.
Yeah.
Right?
Cool.
And it's not this, I'm sorry you're offended, non-apology thing.
Yeah.
Here's so much. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Right, what I want to do is I'm going to mention to the chat and your chat as well what we're going to do, just because I want to make it as interactive as possible. I know we've crowbarred in some stuff as well. I'm going to...
okay, there was one more question from Tyson. Let's do that one.
I was going to say we'll do that, but I'm just going to let them know what the structure is, and then we'll answer that in a sec. So what I'm going to do is just say to people, I have the interview questions that are on the Geek and Sundry forum. We're going to go through that, and then I'm going to leave some time roughly at the end to give people time in the chat to ask questions, and we're going to just quick fire them at the end as a little game at the end. So what I'll say to people is, if you've got a question now, just hold back until towards the end of the podcast, the recording, and we'll get to them then. We're going to do the pre-done ones. And now we'll get through them as quick as we can, and then we'll do a little fun interactive bit at the end where you can ask Ryan anything.
You can ask me anything, but I won't guarantee any answers. Man, there's other stuff I want to talk. Yeah, I mean, basically the main thing I wanted to talk about in this interview was the concept of TeamHuman and trying to grow inclusive communities that are compassionate. I wanted to highlight the Marshall Rosenberg book, Nonviolent Communication, which I did earlier.
Sounds amazing, yeah.
That was kind of my soapbox for the interview.
I
think we covered a lot of stuff pretty well.
Yeah.
I do want people to ask, if you have any curiosity or you have anything that you think you want to hear my opinion on in terms of that vein, that's kind of my soapbox now, right? Yeah. That's the stuff that I really, truly care about. And that's how I think I see the geek community growing and changing in a positive manner, is through communities like TeamHuman. And I want to stress that through charitable work and charitable donation, and trying to approach people, not to be at loggerheads with people and try to butt heads, but to try and gently lead people to see that there's a better way to be.
Yeah.
And it's a really hard thing to do. It's a really tall order. But we had a raid on our channel, I think on Monday, which is where Twitch streamers kind of flood in and start pasting stuff, and it's generally considered a compliment. And that was a situation that my mods managed to defuse beautifully, and that could have turned out much worse than it did. And that's the kind of thing that forms solid friendships, is by having a disagreement and arguments, but also being able to come to terms with each other properly.
Yeah.
So okay, continue. I'm sorry. I just wanted to talk about that for a bit.
No, that's good. I mean, I think that's one thing I'm hoping that the Geek Apocalypse and TeamHuman and Geek and Sundry and all these other geek communities that are coming out of the kind of the new media, I suppose, is the way you want to phrase it, is that I think that's where my podcast belongs, is because I get people who on the show who are kind of reluctant to talk at this long of a format and reluctant to talk about very other things. But then I say to people, if you want to do the conventional sort of 10-minute interviews, this isn't the place to be, because I want to talk to someone and give someone the opportunity to give the context to what they're thinking. Because if I give a soundbite of you saying, if we took a soundbite of what you said earlier on in the podcast where you say someone could take the geek community is shit.
They might.
And then use it. But yeah, but know what I'm saying? I'm just making the valid point, yeah.
No, because this is such a good point, because either they're going to fall prey to their preconceived notions about defensiveness and the preconceived notions they have about what somebody like me has to say about quote unquote their community.
Yeah.
Or they can be curious, not believe the 10-second soundbite that someone's going to take out of this podcast and try to learn more about what my views actually are.
By listening to the whole thing.
Everybody's got a choice.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's why I always give them the choice of how much people can listen to by giving the unedited full version, because I think that gives anyone who's on the show the opportunity to go, if they can stand by what they say. Because if someone then crowbar a point of it, I've had that happen where someone's took a snippet of one of my shows and said, and there was one particular one that got quite a bit of attention where it was quite a well-known person on the podcast and from the UK, and they made a fleeting reference to something, and it got reported on, and I was just like, well, and I got asked about it, and I just said, well, listen to the whole thing. It's a bit like, listen to the whole thing and you'll see that's not what the point was, and even if it was, be more informed about what it is that he said before actually just looking at that one point. And
there'd be no way for me to communicate what I wanted to say without somebody being able to take a 10-second soundbite and make something. And
good point, yeah.
So I might as well just go out and say it right now.
Yeah.
That the geek community is shit. The people who, and more precisely, the people who think of themselves as quote unquote true geeks, that community is pure shit.
2 seconds, Ryan. Geek Apocalypse does not condone Ryan Day or anything that he possibly says, and Geek Apocalypse is not responsible for. I just wanted to make that joke, but yeah, but no, it's all good. It's all good. But yeah, we were gonna answer the second part of Tyson, you guys' question of what was your philosophy of games and technology, and what would you change?
Question.
Yeah, great question.
The concept of what game is of course, increasingly more fuzzy as technology gets more and more advanced, and you have stuff like the Oculus Rift and Valve's own VR headset coming out. You have the potential to have situations with so much more interactivity, and you have. Sorry, I'm eating sour mints. And then
it's cool.
I'm gonna cut it out while I'm talking. Otherwise, I'm gonna spray saliva all over my computer. Man, those are sour. Okay. So where was I? Yes. The concept of games, right? I mean, people have tried to make certain people, blah blah, who have a hashtag, have tried to make the claim that certain things are not games because they don't have explicit goals, or they're just choose your own adventures, like Twine games, things like that, right? It's fucking bullshit. Like if you look at Conway's Game of Life, which is essentially a state machine simulation, you're gonna call that not a game? Or are you gonna say that it's not a game to try and, if you guys look up Conway's Game of Life, essentially it's more or less a state machine.
Yeah.
Are you gonna try to say that forming different starting patterns to see how they evolve through the fixed deterministic rules of Conway's Game of Life, that's not a game? Or is that what you're going to try to claim? You're going to get in some very big philosophical trouble.
Yeah.
Very quickly if you go down that line of inquiry.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we expand this concept of game, then we see very intriguing possibilities for games not only as ephemeral entertainment, but we have games as art. We have games as therapy, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have, games to make certain perceptions known to us that might be otherwise outside of our perception, right? What is the sound? I'm opening and closing the sour mint box. 'Cause I really want to eat another one.
No,
But
he's rolling a cigar.
Yeah.
That's what it sounded like to me, but there you go.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think the sort of answer to that, as you're pointing out, is that really it's I don't really think you need to pigeonhole games. That's one of the benefits of like Stream Greenlight and various other things, is that the indie game now has got a platform to be showcased.
Exactly.
Better than ever. I want to ask you a question, because this is something I got asked about recently.
People, the funny thing is that this has descended down into the true absurdity of people who are trying to define game in the context of computer gaming. And of course, wouldn't you know it, it ends up being what computer games are now, like Call of Duty, right? And people want to have these objective game reviews, right? When it's just the silliest shit that I've ever heard of, right? Is objective game review. It's like, well, what do you want? Do you want a bland listing of statistics about the game and the number of pixels that it pushes?
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, descends into the level of absurdity.
Yeah.
Right? And they want to have a dictionary definition for what a game is in the context of computer gaming, specifically to prevent the kind of diversity that's been coming out of the indie scene.
Mm-hmm. I don't see why. Do you think there's any point really in defining anything? I mean, I don't really see the idea of, like, putting stuff into topics or whatever. You can say the same thing about music, is that saying, oh, I want to argue about what genre it is. No, shouldn't the better argument would be whether we like it or not? Like, that's really what it comes down to, is whether, do you like this game or not? Well, who gives a fuck where it came from? Like, obviously, if you want to know about it, if you're curious about it, go ahead. But yeah, I don't really see the point in categorizing or coming up with the definition of what a game is. Well, the beautiful thing about it is it can be anything. An interactive platform is basically what it is,
Interactive platform, that's interesting. I think, like, for me, watching a movie isn't a game, right? There are people who do things like gamify fitness programs by saying, if you lift a certain number of reps or a certain number of pounds, you get a badge, and that's a game, right? That's a game to you.
Yeah.
Right? And that's great. That's very motivating for many people, right? That's what the Photocracy website is all about, is gamifying fitness.
Yeah.
Watching a movie, a purely one-way, non-interactive form of entertainment, I don't think you could call that a game, but you can make a drinking game out of it, right? Like, every time Captain Picard says "make it so," you do a shot. That's a game, right?
I think you find you can make a drinking game out of pretty much anything, really. Watch the first season of Star Trek: The Next Generation and take a drink every time that they say "boy off the bridge" to Will.
But it's like, you open up the concept of games to include all sorts of interactive art, then you do have video games as art. And Roger Ebert was excoriated a while back for claiming that video games could never be art, right? And that is a very narrow definition of game, I feel. I mean,
you also get to the trouble of then you got to define what art is. Yeah.
I know, right? I mean, I think some people think they could define art, right? There's many people who try to define art as what they churned out in the Renaissance when you compare it to things like a Jackson Pollock or, even but what happens if you go halfway between a Jackson Pollock and a Michelangelo, like, say, a Monet, where things are discernible of a discernible form, but they're not as crisply defined as a Renaissance art is, right? And then you start getting into some severe issues in terms of you get into a philosophical quagmire where your whatever you're saying quickly becomes nonsense, So it's like, at what point does a color become blue if you look at a gradient, right? So
very interesting.
It's this very conservative mindset.
Definitely.
It's entirely there to prevent progress.
Cool.
In my mind. Yeah. So
right. What I want to do now is get onto the. I mean, we can talk about this forever, as we did in the last podcast.
I love that. I love beating up on this this objective game review thing. I just love just using it as a punching bag, because it's like the shittiest fucking idea known to man, is these video game reviews must be objective, right? It's like, that repudiates the idea of video games as art. And so on one hand, you have the same crowd who have been clamoring for video games to be declared art for years, for decades even. And then once they are treated as a serious art form and they're subject to criticism as an artistic form, you have a shitstorm. And suddenly you want them to be treated as mere consumer products like cars, where you want a consumer reports type thing, of where you want to.
Great point.
Yeah.
Great point.
So,
I never thought of it that way. Yeah, that's a fantastic point, because a lot of the times when you get what you want, as in if the goal is to, as you're pointing out, to have video games sort of on a par with films or whatever other industry it is, a great point that you're making there is that that's such a great point, because people do, once they get to that level, once you start criticizing it and it's being treated the same way, they're almost like, oh, but we're only little old us.
Yeah.
Why attack us for that when they become bigger than that? I mean, who'd have thought video games would outsell music?
It's just entertaining. It's just entertaining. It's just entertainment. That's all.
Yeah.
Why is everyone so up in arms about only white dudes killing brown dudes? It's just entertainment. It's not like it's, and so you can't talk about the problematic aspects that the things that artistic works such as video games are reflections about our society. And if that's true, then our society has a sickness that needs to be talked about. And people are trying to prevent that conversation. And it is intellectual dishonesty, and it is intellectual nonsense. So there you go.
Definitely. Right. What I want to do is because obviously there was a forum discussion page put on Geek and Sundry, and there was a bunch on there last time. So I want to get to them, and then we'll do a little quick interactive bit at the end with the chat. So Toronto Gal, who we mentioned earlier, huge great moderator for Geek and Sundry, she's an absolutely brilliant girl. And so she has questions. This one really intrigued me because I'd like to know as well is that you've worked and done the studio produced gaming experience Co-optitude, as well as the live informal experience of Twitch. How would you compare and contrast the two? What are the pros and cons of each field?
I like Twitch. I ate more sours because I'm going to be like slobbering. Okay. They're really different, man. They edit out a lot of stuff in Co-optitude. I feel.
If anyone wants to know how long do you record for, I know there's people who emailed me about this. How long do you record an episode for? Just so people know.
Usually not less than 45 minutes and not more than a couple hours. If an episode is going extraordinarily well, like the X-Men episode did, where all those Cyclops-like things came from, we were rolling for a long time because we were having a ton of fun.
Cool.
Oh my God, these things are so sour. My mouth is just like full of spit right now.
You made the second mistake.
No, I ate two.
I know,
two at once.
Two at once.
Too much. Twitch. I'd have to say I get less anxious on Twitch, even though there's more risk of my saying something offensive.
Because the instant feedback.
I'm playing video games. I feel that I'm wasting everyone's time less on a Twitch stream than I am, because if I'm taping an episode of Co-optitude, and this is me speaking, my own anxieties and my own fear and self-doubt is that there is a high stake on each episode of Co-optitude, because it's like there's literally 6 or 7 people involved on each day of shooting, each of the 2 days of shooting. And so I feel that I am duty bound to turn out product that's funny, because I don't want to waste anyone's time. I don't want to waste my sister's time. I don't want to waste Omer's time, who's the videographer. Whereas on Twitch, I feel more relaxed because I'm just spending an evening at home playing computer games, shooting the shit with people.
Yeah.
Right. And consequently, when I do the Co-optitude live on Twitch with my sister on Sundays, I feel a little more stressed there because I don't want to waste her time either.
Yeah.
So there's a lot less of an emotional burden going into Twitch stream than there is going into the Co-optitude filming.
Yeah. And obviously you kind of answered it.
That's the chief difference.
Yeah.
That's the chief difference between the two.
I mean, and she answered it as well, as that really, Twitch is a much more informal platform, where YouTube you get the edited professional, like, this has to be funny. It's interesting because I do a radio show in Newcastle now, and we often do pre-recorded edited stuff, so I have to edit everything down, and you basically look for anyone who does any editing will know this. You look for the killer part of the interview, and you keep that, and then throw away the rest of the stuff, like you're saying with Co-optitude. So It's a real discernible difference. Where on Twitch you get the whole thing unedited and free flowing, and you can get a lot more done, and it's a little bit more creative. You can argue, maybe at least instantaneously.
Right.
But yeah, no, it's interesting. I thought that was a really great question.
Okay,
I've no idea what
collectible.
this is. I have no idea what this is in
But
reference to, but this sounds really interesting. In one of your streams, Ryan promised to one day tell the Ballad of Busta story.
oh
The
yeah,
cat,
I will
the
tell
story
the
of a cat he
yes,
adopted. If he's willing, would he tell the story
It's-
within the interview?
I will. I will. I will not tell that story right now. I will tell that story at the time that I donate the initial donations to Austin Pets Life Charity. I am actually going to tell that story on stream. So I will not tell it today because it's a real tearjerker for me personally.
Fair
But
enough.
I will tell it within the next. I'll tell it in the next 2 weeks on a Twitch stream. I promise.
Ooh, so at least he's teasing
everybody
it.
hold after the 15th. After the 15th of April, which is when the initial funds from the Twitch ad revenue, which is next to nothing, and then the subscription revenue, which is a decent amount of money. After that first donation to Austin Pets Alive, I will be telling that story. So
Brilliant.
there you
go. Awesome. Well, there you go. You got an answer.
Yeah.
Hug to All asks, what are the 3 qualities you look for in a game to choose for your personal stream?
Ooh, good one. Wow, that's a fucking awesome question. Sometimes games that don't look like they're going to do well. Like let's take Shadow of Mordor for example. Shadow of Mordor
Something we
is
both
saved
streamed.
by virtue of its really, yeah. That game is saved by virtue of its extremely good writing, and the fact that it's a Tolkien property, and the fact that they got Andy Serkis for Gollum's voice.
Yeah.
Right. It's got a good pedigree for a backstory, and the people who made the game treated that franchise, the Lord of the Rings franchise, with I thought extreme respect. I think it's a great game. That said, my first reaction was it's a bit shallow. The gameplay is a bit shallow, and it is. You know, if you don't go straight through the plot line, it's a bit shallow. It's a bit monotonous, and yet I've been playing that game on my Monday or my chill out stream for months. Like literally months I've been playing that game, and it's the same shit over and over, and yet everyone manages to have a good time week after week doing the same shit. And it's because I don't know what I can't put my finger on exactly what it is, really. It's sort of a combination of fun gameplay and stuff that's just easily taken out of context. You guys who watch the stream know what it is. I'm not going to say it in such a polite company, but if you've watched my Monday night, or I don't know when it was, Wednesday night chill out streams, you guys know what it is. And being able to form stories around that, and being able to kind of bullshit. And that's for the Twitch, right? And for Co-optitude, there seems to be no rhyme or reason, because again, the X-Men episode, that is a fairly straightforward, top-down, isometric beat-em-up game. There's nothing really that remarkable about it, but that ended up being one of the funniest episodes ever. And there are just some sort of special qualities about some games that lend themselves well to being lovingly mocked and to have fake situations put into them. There are some games when we thought would be really, really funny that just probably didn't pan out in Co-optitude episodes, and we were really disappointed because it seemed on paper these are the perfect Co-optitude fodder, right? And on the surface, Shadow of Mordor does not seem like long-term Twitch play material, but it absolutely has been.
Yeah.
And so there doesn't seem to be an exact formula of what games will work well. Like Divinity, and there's something I've been saying on stream lately, is that I'm turning these games into Seinfeld. And Seinfeld was the American TV show that is famously a show about nothing.
Yeah.
Right? There's no central plot. There's no real character development or character arcs throughout the run of the show. It's just a show about individual funny situations happening. And that's what
it was on
my
over,
Twitch stream. Yeah. That's what I try to turn. Yeah. That's what I try to turn my Twitch stream into is I make games, I twist their plot lines into absolute absurdity. And I overlay this attempted improv comedy over it. And that's what Divinity turned out to be, is we Seinfelded the fuck out of that game. And it ended up being absurd. And so we're switching games because we've kind of gone where we're going to go with it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Lammers 05, Fairbrook, also a dating game that I picked up initially as a palate cleanser after my Five Nights at Freddy's 1 and 2 stream, and it ended up being hilarious. Really, really fun.
Yeah.
So again, there's no rhyme or reason. You just have to like accept what the game gives you and see if you're twisted enough to turn it into something even better.
Yeah,
So
I think as someone
there you
who
go.
does productions as well, I know your sister's better at this than anyone to ask, I imagine. But and you would have seen it on Co-optitude. Is very much a lot of the time, and I think people who don't make productions of anything don't realize that a lot of the time it's trial and error. It's just literally putting yourself in the position of going,
Yeah.
will this work? Sometimes it doesn't, but the advantage is with pre-recorded stuff is that you never get to see the ones that don't work.
Exactly. Like right now, I'm playing Ori and the Blind Forest on stream, and it's fun, but there's just not as much to grasp onto from a Seinfeld-ing perspective,
Yeah,
as there is in Shadow of Mordor. Now, the intro to that game is certainly there is a lot of creative potential there that I tried to mine in my stream on Tuesday.
yeah.
But as a whole, I think it's going to prove a little less rewarding than the Shadow of Mordor has been. So it just it goes to show you can never tell. You just have to throw shit against the wall and see what sticks.
And also as well, I mean, it just comes down to the simple thing of whether it adheres to your personality and what type of gamer you actually are as well. That's obviously a fair point.
Yeah.
Who was the first jazz music you can remember? What was the first jazz music you remember listening to and why?
No, that was from Hug to All, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Peek in there. I think it was some big band stuff. When I was first starting to learn drums, the drum teacher recommended a bunch of famous drummers, and of course Buddy Rich being the epitome of jazz drumming, or big band jazz drumming anyway. So it's probably something by him, I think. And I've played some of his stuff on my chill out stream, Twitch stream. But it was probably just some bombastic 1940s big band stuff with Gene Krupa or Buddy Rich on the drums, because that was my primary motivation for listening to music was dissecting drummers. So
Cool.
it's probably one of those things.
Great question. Because KC November on drumming, which is actually a nice segue. You mentioned in one of your streams that you thought that John Bonham, the late Led Zeppelin drummer, was overrated. Can you elaborate on this and maybe talk about a rock drummer of a similar style that you feel is better or underappreciated?
I mean, don't get me wrong. The dude was an animal, and he's rightfully. I think he's rightfully influential still to this day. But he was fueled more by emotion than by technical skill, like a lot of 1960s drummers were. I think I certainly like Bonham better than Keith Moon. I think Keith Moon was more overrated than Bonham personally.
Fair enough.
But just a lot of those. I mean, I love me some Zeppelin. I mean, I think they're the best recorded band of all time. I think the recording of Zeppelin albums matches the recording of Beatles albums, in terms of overall recording qualities. But Bonham is a good drummer. He's just nothing as special as people think he is, I think. So, there you are. Just personal opinion. That's all there is to it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Opinion.
That's personal opinion,
yeah.
What was the last? Oh, I remember we had some great discussions about books. I remember we talked about Red Shirts and and John Scalzi. What was the last best book you've ever read? Weirdly phrased.
Book, my favorite book. My favorite book hasn't changed since 8 months ago. My favorite book is still J.M. Coetzee's Disgrace. It's one of the best books I've ever read. It's a very short read.
Yeah, great book. Yeah.
It's such a devastating book. To me, it's on par with The Road in terms of being devastating. It's devastating for completely different reasons. I've been reading a lot of fantasy. The new Joe Abercrombie books, his young adult series, is actually really well written. Half a King is the first one, Half the World is the second. I'm kind of midway through Half the World right now.
Yeah.
I'm really digging it. The new John Connolly, Harry Bosch novel, I look forward to those being released every year.
Yeah.
And that's an Amazon TV show that was decent, I guess. I don't know. I read so much that it's really hard for me to narrow down a book. Certainly one of the most enlightening books that I've read in terms of nonfiction was a book called High Price, which is an analysis of drug addiction and the drug policy in the United States and the history of the war on drugs and the social ramifications of the war on drugs here in the United States and worldwide, as the case may be.
Cool.
So the effects of America's war on drugs are felt far beyond just the borders of our country, and it's a very important subject for social justice, among other reasons. So everything about these things dovetails fairly well together. That's a great book, and I very highly recommend it. It's again, it's called High Price. John West just pasted the link to it in the channel.
Cool.
It's a really, really great book.
Cool.
Let's see what else. Well, let me take a look at my. Actually, let me launch my Kindle app real quick, and
see what you've been reading.
See what I've been reading, because I read so much shit that it's hard for me to. Let's see here. Okay. So my friend, my close friend, wonderful close friend, and amazing streamer Anna Magus, who I have linked on my Twitch page. She got me into a author called Nick Cutter. He's a horror.
Ooh, I think I've heard of him.
A horror writer.
Yeah.
And he has 2 books out, with another one coming out next month. And these books are The Troop and The Deep, and these are 2 of the most horrifying.
Troop. I think I've heard of that. Yeah, The Troop. Yeah.
Please pick it up. Please pick it up. Absolutely wonderful, horrifying books. I thought I liked The Deep a little more than The Troop. Anna Magus thinks the other way.
Yeah.
They are both wonderful. So I would highly recommend those who are interested in horror. They're featured on Anna Magus's horror stream. So please put her on your Twitch bookmarks, because she is one of the smartest, funniest people who I have ever had the pleasure of knowing.
Brilliant.
Let's see here. Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. No, just kidding. I fucking hate Jane
Austen. Withering Heights. Oh God!
I'm a Bronte guy. I'm a Bronte sisters kind of guy myself. They're so much better than Jane Austen. Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman, Richard Feynman's autobiography, set of tales and life lessons about his life. One of the most influential books of my life.
Brilliant.
Yes.
I read a lot of them science stuff. Richard Feynman, legend.
Okay. So there's a webcomic. There's a webcomic called Basic Instructions. Okay. There's a webcomic called, and he has branched out into fantasy books, and he has a 3-book series, in a series called Magic 2.0, and the first one of those is Off to Be the Wizard, and it is one of the most funny fantasy novels I've read in a long time. He channels Terry Brooks, Jack Handy, in sort of equal measures. He has that kind of irreverent, random humor style of Jack Handy, just a flavor of it. And he's a solid writer, very funny, highly recommended.
Cool.
Let's see here. So many, going way beyond the boundaries of this question, but I do read a lot.
That's cool. You didn't have to. I don't need a running list. That's fine. But,
I mean, while people are curious about what they should read, if you like sci-fi, the late great Ian Banks.
Oh yeah, my favorite author. How can you say this? Oh my God, Ian Banks, legend. The
late great Ian Banks, player of games and especially use of weapons. If you must read 2 sci-fi books, those should be the 2. And then the great Neil Asher, who is one of my favorite sci-fi authors, and the Polity series beginning with Gridlinked, a must-read series. I've had the honor of being retweeted by Neil Asher himself.
Nice.
And I just geeked out like a motherfucker when I saw that he retweeted me on something.
I don't blame you. Have you ever read Have you read The Ross Factory by Ian Banks?
The Wasp Factory? No, I never have. That was his first book, wasn't it? I never have had the pleasure.
Absolutely brilliant. It is it's in my top 10 favorite books ever. I highly recommend it. Not just his science fiction work, because for those that don't know, he has a separate name. He has his middle initial for the sci-fi ones, and then he has the other ones. But yeah, The Wasp Factory was the first one, like 1984, I think was the time he did it, something like that. Yeah, his first novel.
Yeah, I've heard it's brilliant, but I've never had the occasion.
Great. Very lucky enough that I got to read it at college, and it's one of my favorite books. I'm really intrigued by this question by Atilarx. I think I'm pronouncing that right, because it's about are your plans still to attend the Just in Bello convention in Rome with Felicia in May? If so,
I'm not going to be at the Rome one. why I'm not going to be in Rome is that I did start a new job and I don't want to be fucking off for 3 weeks while a month after I start a new job. But I will be at the convention in London in the around the 21st of May, I think.
Ooh.
So come down and see me.
I will do. I'm pretty sure I might be coming to that. Which one's that again? Because there's several of them on.
What's the fucking name of it? It's like E something something. I don't even know. I'm such a bad person.
I'm sure I should know that. I should know that. There's so many, right? Because like the.
I'm sure someone in chat's gonna come up with the correct one, and then I'm gonna say yes, that's the one, and then it will end up being the wrong one, and people will show up at the wrong convention.
Is Felicia? Is Felicia attending that convention as well?
Yes.
Cool. That would be great.
It's MCM. Dogs.
Okay, the touring one because they tour all over the country. But yeah, their main one's in London. That's awesome. I'll make sure I come down to that. But yeah, no, that's really cool. So if the byproduct of that question was if there's anything in particular that you can't wait to see, is there anyone in particular you can't wait to see in person when you're in Europe? I imagine like in the convention schedule, is there anyone you want to meet or I'm assuming that's what that means.
Oh man, I don't know. I haven't even looked at the convention schedule. Like I said, I'm such a bad person. So,
is there on a related note, or the byproduct, part 3 of this question is on a related note? Is there a region, domestic or international, that you would really love to visit, aka Newcastle? Doesn't say that. I added that.
Well, we are going to Scotland next month, and I always wanted to go to Scotland. We're only going to be there for a few days, but it's going to be amazing for me.
Ooh. What's that
I've
for?
always wanted to go to New Zealand.
Are you going to the MGM in Glasgow?
Oh, you're breaking up, dude.
Am I?
Can you hear me?
Hello?
Yeah, okay, there, you're better now.
Oh, sorry.
Hello?
Hello?
No, you're breaking up. Hello?
Am I gone? Hello?
No, you're here. You're here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, I think we're back on track.
Cool.
No, we're going to be in Edinburgh.
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. Is that for a convention as well?
No, just for pleasure.
All right, cool.
I have always wanted to go to New Zealand. I've always wanted to go to the primeval forest that's in Poland and Serbia as well. There are some amazing sort of primeval places still left in Eastern Europe. Particularly, there is a forest that has not been logged out. It's one of the few truly primeval forests left in the world, actually. Let's see. I want to go to a lot of places, actually. I want to go to Brazil, like tons of places. So,
cool.
Anywhere wild. Anywhere wild. So,
Collectible Cat, apologies. There's a couple of questions in chat, so I'm going to make sure they get through because she said he's asked this several times.
Yes, close friend, yeah.
Were you nervous when filming the first Co-optitude episode?
Yeah, dude. I get nervous every time I film an episode of Co-optitude. I get nervous before Twitch. I get nervous before I go to work every day because I put high stakes. I put very high stakes on every day. I put a lot of pressure on myself to do something positive or to create something good or to do my best every day. Every day you have to put some chips in the middle of the table. Like every day you have to buy in to every day. And so, yeah, I get nervous. Everything is important because one thing my sister said to me a long, long time ago that I really, truly took to heart was that how you do anything is how you do everything, right? And so if you decide you're going to totally half-ass something that you don't care, then that attitude blends over and bleeds over into the rest of your life as well.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
yes, I do get nervous. And being nervous is not a bad thing.
Nope.
Being nervous just means that you have some stakes. You have some skin in the game, right?
It's also people who don't like pressure.
Being nervous means that you care about the outcome.
Exactly.
Right? Like they say that Laurence Olivier used to throw up backstage before every performance. Something like that.
Yeah.
So he put very high personal stakes on the outcome of what he did because he took great pride in it.
Yeah.
If you don't give a fuck, you're never going to feel nervous because you're just one of those people who observes through life and never interacting with it.
And nothing's going to ever mean anything, yeah.
No, because it's very hard to press. There's scientific studies that show that you should be a little bit nervous, but you should never be anxious to the point where you can't operate, right?
Yeah.
So there's sort of a boredom, a level of boredom and a level of anxiety, or what is it? So there's two axes, right? One is boredom, and the other is skill, right? So if something requires a high amount of skill, and you're anxious about it, then you're never going to be able to perform well, right?
Yeah.
If something requires a low amount of skill, then you're going to be bored with it, right?
Yeah.
And so you want to be right on this sort of axis between the two, right?
Yeah,
and
somewhere in the middle. Yeah.
I kind of mangled the explanation for that. Yeah.
It's also a bit like I remember hearing Gordon Ramsay say, and it's not very often I agree with Gordon Ramsay, but he was talking about in an interview I saw once about pressure, and saying pressure is actually a healthy thing that people should want to have. It's only when you can't handle it that it becomes difficult. Pressure's good because, as you're saying, it's kind of like anxiety, but it's just kind of a more, I suppose, poignant word in that it means something, and pressure means that there's an outcome to what you're delivering. Whereas if you're doing something that doesn't have that, doesn't mean anything. And actually, the ultimate question should be, do I want to be doing this? And if you're asking that question, you might as well. You need to ask more stuff, I think.
And I think the statistic is that you should be in a place in your job in your life where you succeed about 80% of the time, because you fail 20% of the time and you learn from your failure, but you succeed 80% of the time. That gives you positive motivation. Mm-hmm. So if you're in a situation where you're failing 80% of the time, you get frustrated and you quit. And so there's an axis where you want to be on, where you're succeeding about 80% of the time, and you're still nervous. You still feel a tiny flavor of anxiety at the situation because the outcome matters, and you're not 100% sure that you're going to succeed.
Yeah.
Right. And so it just motivates you. It should motivate you. So
definitely,
there you go. That's the answer there. Right.
Cool. Yakumu_Fuji, I think that's how you pronounce it, says, "What is your fondest fondest childhood memory?"
Probably something to do with computer games or cats. One of the two.
Mm-hmm.
No. I've always owned cats since I was a kid, and they've always meant a lot to me. Cool. And I continue to own cats, as you guys might have heard earlier in this interview.
Yeah,
I have a lot of positive memories. I have a lot of positive memories of playing computer games. It's just probably one of those. They've always meant a great deal to me, and they make up both that and love of animals makes up a great deal of who I am today. So, there you go.
I know you touched on this on the last podcast we did, but it's about being in the Air Force, having an Air Force family. I think
I never was.
No, but you had a family, yeah. My brother. The question is, my brother is a career Air Force member and has been stationed in different countries all over the world with his wife and kids. I have to ask, knowing your dad was in the Air Force, was he ever stationed overseas? If so, did the family move with him? And if so, did the culture of that place change?
I wish.
Okay.
I wish. That would have been awesome. I would have loved, there's a bunch of Air Force. And I have a whole bit about this. It's basically like every other Air Force brat I've ever known or have met, they lived at Ramstein Air Force Base in Germany for a period of time. And, it's like, oh, Germany was amazing. I spent 5 of my teenage years in Germany, and it was awesome. And that's just not the case with us. We lived in primarily these kind of shit-ass, awful places in the United States, primarily in the Southeast, in Mississippi and god-awful places like that. So, no, I did not have... I think that this is the... honestly, one of the great things I take pride in my life is having overcome the areas of the country in which I was born, was having de-emphasized the influence of those places in my life and having looked long and hard about that and having changed it as a result. So having succeeded in the ways that I have succeeded in spite of certain aspects of my upbringing has been the most proud I've been in is the thing I feel most proud of about myself.
Excellent.
So there you go. Yeah, I wish I'd traveled to interesting places, but...
Well, if anyone wants to know, because I don't want to overgo what we talked about in the last podcast, but if you want to hear what Ryan says about being growing up in an Air Force base with his family, you can listen to his answer on the last podcast, because I remember we talked about that at length. What is your favorite?
So guys, the axis. I want to correct myself. So the axis that I'm talking about is, imagine your vertical axis being the challenge of a task, and imagine the horizontal axis being your particular skill. right? So if you are of high skill and you are faced with a low challenge task, then you're going to get bored. If you are faced with a high challenge task and you have low skills, then you're going to experience anxiety. So the channel where the challenge or the level of
Optimum level.
skill
Yeah.
that you have matches the level of challenge in the task, that is where you are able to feel most comfortable working and growing. So you want to avoid boredom and you want to avoid anxiety. So there you go.
I want to touch on this
There you
because
go.
I imagine I have a lot to say about this. I'm intrigued to know what you think. Because it says, C. Randy Gamble says, Ryan, you recently linked an article from the Times about finding happiness
you must
even
mean
in...
Candy Gambler, I think. I think you mean Candy Gambler.
Oh, sorry, I'm dyslexic, so the fact that...
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, but yeah, okay, yeah. So he asks about finding happiness in difficult situations, as depression is common, especially in the geek community. Can you talk to us a bit about how you've used attention and appreciation to find light in that darkness?
Wow, that is such a great question. Okay, so I'll be frank, and I'll say that there have been times when I've been so depressed that I didn't want to get out of bed. You know, there have been times when I've been so depressed that I couldn't step foot out of the house for like weeks at a time, you know, and I was subsisting on like canned beans and shit like that, you know. And, I think we've all been to dark places in our life, and we find ways to deal with it.
Yeah.
There's no special formula. There's no formula that's going to work for everybody. Depression and other emotional and mental issues are unrightfully derided and made fun of, and people with issues like these are made to feel less than human, and people treat them like people treat mental disorders differently than they treat physical disorders, right? Mm-hmm. They look at somebody with a disease like cancer and they say, oh, the poor, they have to get treatment for that, right? But they look at somebody with the stigma of depression or bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, and they say, wow, what's wrong with that person? Mm-hmm. We're not going to encourage you to get treatment for your problem. We're not going to encourage you to acknowledge your problem and try to deal with it. We're going to pretend that it doesn't exist, or we're going to tell you to some worthless platitudes like cheer up. We're going to tell you some worthless platitudes like, well, have you tried this? We're going to dispense advice to you, right? You don't go to somebody with cancer and you don't say, have you tried eating more whole wheat, whole grains, right? Have you tried eating this? They're going to say, no, get yourself to a hospital, get chemotherapy, right? Go get radiation treatment, take care of this issue so that you can live a whole and happy life surrounded by people who you love and who you care about and who love and care about you in turn. Get to a place in your life where you can enjoy life instead of feeling like you're sick and like you're going to go at any moment.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's this division between physical and mental and emotional issues that people have, when in actuality, people with mental and emotional problems, whether it be through chemical imbalances, whether it be through physical ailment, whether it be through just a bad upbringing or a lack of self-esteem, there are problems, and they're endemic problems that will affect you every day, and they'll sap your strength as much as any physical ailment ever will sap your strength. Yeah. And yet, for some reason, we want to sweep these problems under the rug. We want to encourage people to change just a little bit about themselves because it's your fault that you're depressed. It's your fault. We want to put the stigma on the person that they caused this for themselves. And it's one of the most horrifying and it's one of the most awful things that you can do to somebody with these problems is to tell them to deny themselves or give them these quick fixes.
Yeah.
So what can I speak to myself about that is that it wasn't as simple as reading a linked article, about paying attention to things that make you happy, right? It wasn't as simple as, any sort of medication, It's something that you need assistance with and you need treatment for. So if anybody out there watching this is suffering from depression or, any of these other mental ailments that you might feel shame about, or you might feel less than people around you about, I urge you, please go get help from a professional. There are roads to bettering yourself and to living productive, normal life. But, there are number of tools that you gain as you gain treatment for these things. There are a number of tools that are in your pouch. but you don't automatically learn how to use these through reading articles or by even reading books. It's important to try to read articles and books to find ways to improve your life. But, these are things that are systemic. They're not quick fixes. And the last thing that I wanted to communicate by posting that article was to imply that just by magically changing your outlook, you become a happy person. That's absolutely not right. But, there are tips and tricks that can make you appreciate life a little better and to try to keep the morass, the quicksand that is depression, from sucking you down.
Yeah.
Once you've reached a good baseline through whatever help that you've decided to pursue.
I mean, as
that's
you know,
the best thing I can say about that.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for being so honest and talking about how, about all the stuff that you've went through. It's really great. As you know, because before we started the podcast, I chatted to Ryan about what I've went through, and I really want to talk about this to this audience because it's incredibly important. Because I've received a lot of attention for this, and believe it or not, I've had criticism for this as well. If you want to hear my whole story, because I legally challenged the NHS system here in the UK, I won, which was very rare, because I suffer with bipolar disorder, a quite extreme version of it, and I was mistreated by the mental health system, ended up being put on a medication that wasn't helping, and ended up fighting for my life. I became so ill that I literally was fighting for my life in terms of my body was breaking down as well as my mind. And what I would say in adding to what Ryan eloquently put in regards to his struggles is, first of all, I think the key thing is to not make it competitive. I find a lot of the times with any mental health disorders, because regular people who don't have a mental health disorder don't really fully understand it, it becomes a competitive thing of, well, I want people to know about my illness more than anyone else's because mine's more important, or mine's more difficult, or mine's more this, and that's a perspective you can never have. It is much more important.
No, it's because if you have cancer, your body's betraying you, right?
Yeah.
But if you have an emotional or mental disorder, well, you are your mind, right? And so you're just fucked forever.
Yeah.
That's the common, and it's completely wrong, right?
Yeah.
There are chemical imbalances where your body betrays your brain. There are learned habits through childhood experiences and through adolescent experiences that cause you to form habits and survival mechanisms that are survival mechanisms at the time, but become maladaptive and harmful later in life. And these are things that you can help yourself. These are things that can be helped through experts, people who are familiar with treating these things.
Yeah.
And please continue. I just wanted to.
No, you're quite right. Yeah, no, you're quite right. I think the other perspective is as well is I was just making the analogy of that. Very often, with me having bipolar disorder, for example, you can have an example of someone going, well, bipolar disorder is more difficult to deal with than schizophrenia, or the other way around, or whatever it is, and it becomes this competitive thing of which is the more difficult thing to deal with, rather than actually putting it in a framework of they're all difficult to deal with, they're all individual cases, it's all individuals' perspectives. The most important thing is getting the right treatment. The most important thing is fighting for the availability of that treatment, which is an issue in the UK, which only now the current Conservative Party, who are in the UK right now, have only just recently announced that they're going to put in as much money for mental health as physical health, and that's a big step forward. But one can argue it is a step that should have been took far sooner than now. And I know through reading American articles about all sorts of different things, about how privatizing the pharmaceutical things, and it's all about making money as opposed to giving people the right treatment, and the same in England, where it's all about diagnosing people, frameworking, putting people in a bracket where it says, oh, you're this person, which means you must be dealt with this way. And the reality is, like Ryan is saying, is that if you put 1 million people with bipolar disorder or any mental health disorder you want to mention, whether it's regular depression, severe depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, the whole list is endless, you will find that every single person does not deal with it exactly the same way, and in some cases not the complete polar opposite. And that's the hard part about it. But the thing that irritates me as someone who suffers with a debilitating thing is that very often people don't understand that it's almost like people say, well, if it's that difficult, why should we bother trying? Like, to Ryan's point, it's like, why should we bother trying? Because it's like, you would never turn around to someone who had terminal cancer and say, I'm not going to do everything, I'm going to do nothing to make your suffering any easier. Why would you say that? You would be called an absolute tosser or douchebag, as we were being commenting on.
Absolutely.
You would be called that.
Yep.
Yet the same person who has a mental health disorder, who's suffering with a very similar like symptoms, and I'm not comparing the two and saying any's worse or better, but in the exact same, if you just take the fact about life-threatening, because it is a life-threatening illness, what I have, just in most mental health disorders
Most
are.
definitely.
And that is the key point. It is someone's life at stake, and it's not treated the same way. It's treated like, and it's not the person's fault. And if you're listening to this, like Ryan said,
it's treated like a character flaw. It's treated like a character flaw, right?
And because they don't understand, people do not understand that the illness is a separate entity to the character of the personality that you are. It's intertwined, but it's not definitive. And that's really the key point, because I make the really valid point of, during the stuff that I went through, I'm sorry I'm on a rant, Ryan, but I feel this is really important.
Go for it, man. No, this is very important.
It's just I've had friends during this whole period of time who disowned me over this, who said, I don't understand why you're not getting well. I don't understand why you don't want to get treatment. Yet the one thing you can always say to somebody, if you're listening to this and have feel depressed, feel like you have a mental health issue, and you're not doing something about it, that's the only thing anyone has any right to say to you. That they turn around and say, you're not getting the help you need. Then if you're not getting the help you need, then that's the only thing they can say. But they can't turn around and say it's your fault for having the illness you have, because it's not. The only thing you can do is try your very, very best to get the treatment that you need, and that's all anyone can ever ask of you. But very often, a lot of the time, they ask you stuff that you can't do because you're not capable. You're not a capable human being, and your brain is not working at the capacity that it should be. Cheer up, do more exercise. I can only say it from my perspective, right? But I'll be brutally honest, because I am in all the podcasts I do, is that one of the things that I did before I ended up getting hospitalized, because that's what ended up happening, was I was exercising more. I was in the best shape I was ever in. I was eating healthily. I was cutting down on stuff that I knew I was overdoing, like eating too many crisps and various other things, and monetizing what I was eating and drinking, and I still felt terrible. Because, as Ryan was saying earlier, it's not just about doing the physical stuff to make your physical body in the best shape it can be, because you can do as much of that as you want, but it's a separate entity to your mind. They work in conjunction with each other, but you can't. There's only a certain amount you can do that your body can give you the sort of spiritual or physical health to make your mind do what it needs to do, and that's people just don't get that.
It's not to shit on that, right?
Yeah,
those are good things, but it's not like people think there's this one thing, this panacea, right?
Yeah.
And it's not. It's an illness, right? You can't exercise away cancer, right?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I mean, exercise is an important component of my personal happiness, but it's not how I dragged myself out of the quagmire, right?
It's yeah, but as I say, I have people who have said to me, because I make this very valid point, and I have a feeling Ryan's going to agree with me on this. It's a bit like, if you end up in a situation like I was in, where I was incredibly having manic episodes, maybe 20 times a day, at the worst point of I am, and I'm usually lucky enough that if I do all the stuff that I need to do to look after myself, and my brain is working the way it should be through medication and various other things, I'm fortunate enough that maybe I only have them a few times a month, if I'm lucky. I can't guarantee that, but I'm saying that's the likelihood of what I've accepted that a long time ago. I mean, I found out about this 10 years ago. But the thing is that it's so when it ends up at that point, it's just people say to you, why can't you just find a way out of it? Why can't you just do more? Why? The worst thing I got told when I was in hospital, I was in a intensive care in a psychiatric ward, and I was struggling to get out of bed, and I was taking medication that was actually destroying my body and was not helping my mental health at all. And I was getting told by people who I've known for 10 years, or maybe even longer, some people, why can't you just try harder? And I mean,
Wow, that's
yeah,
really insensitive.
exactly, yeah. And
It's very
but
insensitive.
it's in a sort of sadistic way, in an objective way. You can sort of understand that sort of ignorant logic that they're trying to find. It doesn't make very much sense from my perspective, but from theirs, it's like, because they can't see it. Because as you say with the cancer, you can see a sort of physical debilitation with cancer, whereas with mental health, because it's inside, you can't see it through someone's head. You can't go, well, I can't see it, therefore I choose not to believe it. And obviously people have this fragmented viewpoint as well, of that everybody suffers mental health now. This is another thing, a bit like what we're talking about with geeks, is that everyone thinks they're a geek now because it's popular, just like mental health is talked about more, which is go, well, I have a mental health problem, why is yours more important? And that really drives me crazy. But I just wanted to say, like, the point I'll end on is what I was saying, I think Ryan will agree with me on, is I said to people, if I was as bad as I felt during the time I felt suicidal and felt like I wasn't coping and felt ill and like I wouldn't be able to manage it, right? Wouldn't I, if I was that character, why would you choose to be my friend for that long if that was me?
Yep.
What is the discernible difference? The discernible difference is I am telling you I don't feel right. I am telling you that there's something not right. I have mental health professionals telling you that it's an illness, and yet you're prepared to crowbar in that is what I'm going to be like forever, when over a 10-year period it's happened 2 months, and yet that is grounds to justify that the 10 years are meaningless and the 2 months is what I'm always going to be. And it's going to be this discriminatory factor of I'm being labelled with it. Whereas I accept what I have, but I don't like the idea of it being a label, because it's not. I mean, look at the podcast we've just done, we're doing now as we speak. We've talked about it, for 10 minutes? It's not the be-all and end-all of what we talk about, but it doesn't mean it doesn't affect my life or whatever it is. But at the same time, it doesn't mean I want to talk about it all the time. It doesn't mean that I want to. It defines me, I guess, is what I'm saying. It baffles me how little, and I don't know what it's like in America, but the information out there is just wrong. It's just wrong the way it pigeonholes us into being, the way it tells people to deal with it in a way that's counterproductive. But yeah, I suffered a great deal, and there was an article I read, I think it was from America, I think it was in the New York Times actually, where it basically said it was something Bill Clinton said in a speech in the 90s as well, where he basically said the worst, if you ever survey people about mental health, majority of the people say that the hardest thing is, the thing that hurts the most is not the illness, it's the way people treat it. In some cases it hurts more, and I love that point. I just think that's so true. And I feel my responsibility in telling this story is not to put attention on myself, is to get people who are ever in my situation to get the help they need. And that is what I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about telling people, if you feel that way, go and get the help you need. And if anybody tells you that you are not trying hard enough, or tells you that you're a useless human being, you're not. You're a great human being, and you deserve to be known. And like me, look at me and Ryan. We've just talked about our circumstances with dealing with it. And I like to think we're both human beings who deserve to be known and deserve to be seen and to be heard. It doesn't mean we should be excluded. And if you are feeling that way, then the people who are excluding you are ignorant little shitholes, and we need to find some sort of way of getting them to see it from our perspective. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say. It angers me, and I'm pleased to say I'm part of Mind, which is a charity in the UK now which deals with mental health, and I regularly talk about it now. So I hope you just find the courage to fight it like I did, because I'm one of the lucky ones that won, not just from a legal standpoint, but from a I'm still alive standpoint.
There's light at the end of the tunnel. It's just please, if you are suffering, or if any of what we've talked about sounds familiar to you, please don't hesitate to just reach out and get the help that you need. Otherwise, you're at risk for losing years at best, losing years of your life.
I mean, it was circumstance. A lot of it was circumstance for me, but yeah, I lost about 6 months of my life. But half of that in hospital, and the rest of it in my house, in my bedroom, not leaving. And the life that
you put your life on hold.
Yeah, your life is precious and is worth living, and we're not saying it isn't hard. I know Ryan will probably want to say that as well. It's impossible sometimes. But as me and Ryan are saying, there is a way of getting out of it, and there's support people out there. I think one of the things that I want to do as well, if through my help, is to get people in the direction of the help they can get. It's just difficult to find, but it is out there. So hopefully you can find the outlet that you can find that will help you get through whatever it is you're experiencing. But you're not alone in how you feel, and I hope you find what you do, because I know a lot of people who still are reluctant to talk about it, and I hope that us talking about it now, I really wanted to talk about this because it's a really important thing. But there you go.
I can't say it any better than you did. You obviously went through an incredibly hard situation, and you've come out the other side much better. And so you're a testament to the fact that it is possible to move through tough periods in your life like that when you are at dire risk. And so you're living proof to anybody out there who's watching right now who might be suffering from these things. Please.
And I'm willing to take the abuse I get for it. I'm willing to take it, because there is people who are going to abuse you over it if you talk about it openly. I mean, because I got accused of being like self-centered and being attention seeking with my mental health, and I make no profit. Why would I? I make no money off doing that. I do it purely in my own free time, and I do it because I get emails every day, and this is what I'm most proud of. I get emails every day of people saying, thank you for sharing it. Thank you for...
That's wonderful.
And I want that. Yeah. I want that because I think that's the most important thing you can do, is, as Ryan was saying earlier on in the podcast, influencing people to do better and to grow as human beings and to learn. And if that's awesome. Sorry, I apologize for that huge rant, Ryan, but
it was incredibly important. I definitely think that it's inspirational what you managed to accomplish, and that you managed to go through a very dark time and to come out whole and happy and in a better place now than you were even when I talked with you last, right?
Yeah, I'm in a much better place.
Really incredible, and I hope I hope you feel justly proud for that accomplishment, because it's not easy to change everything around and to form new habits and to discard old habits. And I definitely hope that you feel proud of yourself. I'm certainly proud of you, hearing everything that you went through and everything that you had to reinvent yourself in order to get to where you are. I certainly am proud of you.
Thanks, man.
That's really a wonderful thing.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. On a lighter note, let's move on. But we have... yeah. Look at the pun, but there you go. As a sort, we have a couple more questions, then I thought we'll end with a little 10-minute thing about the chats and stuff. So yeah, we have... Finley Shard says some potential questions. As a software engineer, if you could design or create anything at all, time and cost not being an issue, what would be your dream project? Great question.
Oh wow, that's really good. Probably a universal translator.
Haha, yeah, man.
If I could do a universal translator.
Yeah, maybe we can get people to understand mental health.
There's also if I could design. There was a really cool book a long time ago that was written by a sci-fi author. I think they were actually here. They were an Austin-based author, and
oh, nice.
And yeah, James Halperin, and he wrote a book called The Truth Machine, which was about somebody who managed to create a foolproof device to detect whether someone was lying or not. That would be really interesting if every elected official had to wear a device that said they were lying or not.
Nice.
That would be really, really cool. So that concept, ever since I read that book when I was like 13 or something like that, and the concept always stuck with me as a really good one.
Nice.
I would definitely want that. That would be really cool. Either that or a universal translator, because so much is lost in miscommunication. So there you go.
Pansy on the Geek and Sundry forum says, if you can talk about it, if you're not bound by the NDA, what is the project you're most proud of and why?
I can't talk about it. Sorry.
I should have asked if you can talk about this. No.
No, I want to give a shout out to Pansy who did some of the notes in my channel.
All right.
Yeah, I can't talk openly about a lot of the stuff that I do, but it's stuff that you probably have used every day. I won't say that much. So a good percent of you have probably touched the work that I do. So there you go.
Cool. Right. Well, I think we're pretty much done for these questions. So what I thought we'd do, the way I thought we could do it is, obviously I have chat on my Twitch account and on yours as well. I have questions my end and questions your end. So I thought what we'd do is take it in turns. I'll ask a question that's on my channel and then you ask a question on yours. So do you want to start with a question if you've got one that you want to do?
Yeah, I had a couple queued up in a side Sublime text here. So how do I manage a career/life with a busy stream online schedule? Well, this goes with anybody who's trying to accomplish things, and it's just you have to cut out the fat. That's the only way. You have 24 hours. I have the same 24 hours in a day that you have, and so some percentage of that time is wasted. And there's nothing wrong with leisure, and there's nothing wrong with laziness. But you always have the time to carve out something here or there to try and make something happen for yourself. Sometimes that means not going to every party you're invited to, or sometimes it means cooking dinner at home instead of going out for dinner. But there's a way. You just have to find out where the fat and gristle is inside your life, and just to excise it, and to use that time with something that is of meaning to you. And if socialization with friends is of great meaning to you, and that you feel that you would be cutting out something incredibly important, then look elsewhere, right? Or maybe that is some meaning in your life, and maybe you could do something involving socialization that is also a goal for you. So you combine goals. Like I like playing video games, and so I play video games online in front of people. And so the online streaming schedule replaced my playing video games.
Yeah.
So it worked out really perfect.
Exactly what I did. That's
just one example.
Yeah. I would just say as a quick aside as well, is that one of the reasons that I did my Twitch channel was I was struggling with my everyday schedule running a business, is that I struggled to find the time to play video games, and I thought, how can I do that while being proactive in doing that and have my enjoyment of games, dedicate some time on my Twitch channel and try and get a following while doing that. So it gave me time to relax, and it helps towards my career or business, whichever you want to say. So yeah, it's pretty good. Ryan, have you ever visited the set of a show Felicia is filming? And if so, do you have any cool stories?
Co-optitude.
Is there anything that... okay, I'll put you on the spot. Is there anything that has happened during the production, like that happened that was ridiculous, shouldn't have happened, that you want to share, like behind the scenes? Because obviously that kind of stuff probably wouldn't have got released.
There's a lot of stuff that gets cut, and there's a lot of stuff that happens as you film that it just doesn't make any sense, except in the context of you being there with those people in particular. It's just stuff can get silly, stuff gets idiotic, like really bad offensive jokes get cut that you just they come to your mind and you blurt them out. And like there's ever like a reel of cut shit from the show that they do, like if we do a DVD and it's like a bunch of stuff that got cut from the show, it's all this filthy garbage that's awful and makes me look terrible and her look terrible. I have spoken about this joke before, and I will again. My favorite joke that ever got cut from Co-optitude, and this probably might not mean much from anybody outside the U.S., but we were filming the Pokemon Stadium episode.
I love that one.
Yeah, and I turned to her, my sister, and I said, like, "Hey, you know what?" And she's like, "What?" I was like, "This is Michael Vick's favorite game," and so I'm still actually kind of upset about that, because I don't think that was worthy of getting cut. I think it was a perfectly great joke that shouldn't have gotten cut.
Yeah.
And so that's why I always tell that story just so I get that joke out there.
Fair enough.
But no, I haven't really ever visited a working set on other shows, so except for the Geek and Sundry Twitch stream. So
Yeah.
there you go.
There's a joke I have that got cut from a radio program I did where we pre-recorded a segment and I couldn't use it, which I was gutted about. Where when I moved, obviously one of the things you do is you build stuff. So you build you get cupboards and everything, and you have to build them from scratch. And I said I've not seen so much wood since I was a teenager, and they cut it. And they cut it. I was so gutted.
That's so clean. That's so clean, though. That's prudish.
I know, yeah. It's implied. It's an implied joke. I was like, come on.
Prudish. It's not like I haven't seen this much wood since I got a lot of erections as a teenager. That's what you should have said. Maybe they would have left. If it was overtly dirty, maybe they should have left it in.
I don't know.
So let's see. I have. Okay, this was a good question. I think this was Hug to Alls. He asked me really early in the channel, and I guess this is a good time as any. He said, question, how do you evaluate a cause or charity to invest for your Twitch? Well, what's important to me?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Animals are important to me, and people who are set upon and put upon and are powerless or relatively powerless to the majority, that making sure that they have a voice and are represented, that's important to me. Basically, anybody who is exploited by a power gradient within society is a candidate for me to pay attention to and to try to remedy that situation the best that I can in my little life. And so that means for now, animals, and the second charity is the task force. If somebody could please paste that link into the chat right now. Mm-hmm. That is a wonderful organization who does a lot of really, really great work for the gay, lesbian, transsexual, bisexual, and queer communities. And those are the beneficiaries of the first two rounds of the Twitch subscription income. And so that's it. It's just there are certain parties who are set upon and exploited by power gradients and are comparatively powerless. And those are charities that I will focus the most time on.
Excellent.
There you go.
I actually had a really, really great question sent to me through the emails. There was obviously some my end from locally that I wanted to ask you about. Obviously, one of the things we've obviously crowbarred in this in the podcast, but we've talked a little bit about your sister. I know we talked about Felicia quite a bit on the last one because at the time it was we talked about, it was not fairly recent, that guy who came up to our convention and said a really personal thing, and that we asked how you felt about that. So if anyone wants to know his reaction,
that was when she was on a panel, right?
That's right. Yeah,
was that the one?
Yeah. Where she got asked about does the drapes match the carpet or whatever it was, wasn't it? Yeah. Ridiculous.
That was it.
Yeah, it was great. I got quite a lot of response about that, about our reaction, saying that it doesn't help, being portrayed as a bully, being a geek, that we've all been brought up as bullies, and then having someone be essentially a sort of informative bully the way that she is.
Are you calling me?
No, not you. No. The guy who asked Felicia the question. No, sorry, not you.
Okay.
No, the person who asked Felicia the question. We were just saying that. Yeah.
I'll be okay. So here's the thing. I'll be a bully. I absolutely will be a bully. Because I have a great stake. I have a great horse in the race, and that's the people who I love and I care about are in the position of being targets for abuse. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, absolutely, I'll chew your fucking face off, for real.
Yeah.
I will be a bully because I don't have a problem bullying bullies. Because I have no problem being a stronger bully.
Yeah.
I have no problem being contradictory and saying that bullying is bad, but being a bully. Guess what? I don't care. I will. Mm-hmm. I'll absolutely be a bully. Mm-hmm. So
I agree with you on that.
Yeah, but I wasn't sure whether that's what you were talking about.
Oh no, I was saying what I was referring to was the guy who asked Felicia that question. He was in it. We talked about it in the last podcast, where basically we were saying he's in a room full of people who have probably been bullied in their lifetime, and to then go up and say something as insensitive and stuff as that is the kind of paramount to being like a bully. Is what the point I was making, is to kind of just act in a kind of very, very wrong sense, and just in a very.
Okay, that's okay. So that's really cool. Let me. Was there actually a question there, or
No, I was just making a
should
passing
should
reference
talk?
to the
Okay.
fact we've talked about it.
So let me talk about let me talk about this for a second. Let me
Okay.
identify exactly how this is bullying. Okay. Let me identify exactly how this is bullying. Okay. So let's say, what could we possibly say in this dude's defense? Okay. Let's brainstorm for a sec.
What
We
you
could
mean?
say, oh,
What
he's
the
just
person
having
said?
a good time. He's just being playful, right?
Okay.
Something like that, right? Okay. So how is this bullying? Okay. So let's accept, for the sake of argument, because I don't want to go through an exhaustive argument, that this is a dude who's a white, probably heterosexual male. What he's saying is, the subtext of what he's saying is that your accomplishments don't matter. What matters about women in the industry are physical attributes only. Right? He's essentially he's putting her in her place, because the panel is about, I forget what the panel was about, but the question was totally inappropriate. Right? So he was squabashing her attempts to talk about important stuff that she's done, and he's focusing entirely on what women are supposed to focus on, which is their looks. Right? Do you see how that's bullying?
Yeah, definitely.
Because we're taking advantage of a power gradient between heterosexual white men in our society and women in our society. So he's highlighting that, and he's removing the fact that she is an influential person, and he's reducing her to a set of physical attributes. That's how I would identify it as bullying.
Definitely.
And also, it's embarrassing, right? Because he's implying that she might not be a natural redhead, blah 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 blah. Any sort of number of toxic things.
Yeah.
And yes,
what I was leading to, the question I got asked, was a guy from John in Gateshead, which is near Newcastle, was asking, with the success of Felicia, when Geek and Sundry, and obviously the guild and everything else that she's been in, having been her brother and grew up with that, I kind of know the answer to this already, but he said, have you noticed any discernible difference in Felicia since she got this exposure, and obviously everyone knows who she is, or has she always been the sister you grew up with? And I thought that was a really great question.
I don't know. I think that we should all aim to evolve and change as human beings.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, she's certainly one of the most generous, kind people I've ever known. You know, and that continues. She's certainly done an indescribable amount for me over the years in terms of helping me a lot, and I appreciate that and always will. I think that the core of people will generally remain the same, but I think that to succeed in the business that she chose in, it certainly requires certain steel. You have to have a steel to you, STEEL. You have to have kind of a determination. And that's certainly something that I've seen build up in her over the last couple of decades. So that's certainly one big difference. But, people are people. You can always.
Did she say, do you reckon she always had that drive, or is it something that's just happened over time?
I think it's always in you. It's just something that you have to exercise, and then you have to build upon successes in order to reinforce it in yourself, and to have small successes each way, and then you become more confident in showing that side of yourself.
Yeah. Excellent. Ryan, Husky MC Nasty says, Ryan, any funny stories about you that will appear in Felicia's book that you can give us a sneak listen to?
Actually, that's a good question, and I trust her enough to have discretion enough, so I didn't want to clear anything. I don't know what she wrote about me yet, but I certainly trust her enough to know that she would never deliberately seek to do something that was harmful or embarrassing to me. So I don't know what she's going to write, guys. We'll find out together, though, on August. I did see one one specific chapter of the book, which I'm not going to talk about, that was very well written.
Cool.
But it was not about me.
Okay, is there any questions your end? I've got another question here, or is there any on your chat?
Let me look here. Yeah, guys, if you want to ask some questions, guys. Lammers05 actually asked them that I answered. I typed the answer to, but it's like, how do I find motivation to go to the gym on days that you don't want to or are procrastinating? And the answer was simply that you have to decide that it is important enough to you. Yeah. That is the answer to everything. That is the answer to doing any hard thing. Yeah. And I would extend that answer by saying that the only worthwhile things doing are difficult things. Yeah. If something is no longer difficult to you, it is time to up your game to the point where it is once more difficult, or to abandon it in lieu of something that is difficult. And the reason that it is difficult is precisely why it is important to do. So if it weren't difficult, I would probably be too bored to do it if it weren't difficult. So we as human beings, we tend to have an idea about, we are very poor at predicting what will make us happier in the future. And this is a Daniel Gilbert book called Stumbling Upon Happiness. He makes this point where humans are tremendously bad about predicting what will make them happy in the future. Well, it feels really good right now not to go to the gym, right? But later, it will feel really bad to not have gone to the gym.
Yeah.
And later on, it will feel better to have gone to the gym.
So long term, it'll affect you. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you have to have a medium to long term mindset instead of a short term mindset, and you have to make decisions based upon deferring your gratification until later, because we all know. I think we all know that someplace inside of us, what will make us happy, but it's just work. It's hard work, and willpower is a finite resource, and we spend our willpower on silly things sometimes.
Excellent.
So that's the answer, Lammers. You have to make it important to you. Yep. So guys, let me. And
Just
this
do
is
it.
a personal. This is a personal soapbox for me. It's besides, what could possibly be more important than being in superior shape, body and mind, so you can be there for your loved ones and the people who care about you and the people you care about in the distant future. To be a vivacious person who can pass on life lessons and wisdom to somebody who looks up to you. And how can you act every day to be that person who will be able to do those things in the future, and to be there for those who love you and who you love now and who you will love in the future. What can possibly be more important than that? And that's why if you do have issues for health or depression, that it's imperative that you seek the help that you require to get to that place, because that's the most important possible thing that you will look back upon in your life and to value, are those personal relationships with people who you love. Those are the things that last. Any number of physical artifacts, trinkets, tchotchkes, gadgets, those things will mean nothing.
Swastikas.
Right.
Crowbars.
But right. Anything that physical artifacts don't matter as much as the relationships that you form every day. So that's kind of my soapbox on that, is that is the highest possible stakes.
I would just also like to say, as an added thing to what Ryan just said as well, is don't give up on wanting to share your experiences and wanting to be open and open-minded, because it's very easy to get disillusioned when people are so negative and so unwilling to meet you halfway, or unwilling to get to know somebody, and are just clearly set in their ways, that you feel let down enough that you want to be like that, because it's the easier thing to do. And just hold on to the aspect of what you have, sharing with people, and all the other great stuff that happens in life is worth hanging on to. And just don't give up on people, and but most importantly, don't give up on yourself. And you'll find that a lot of the same people who are that way inclined and think like you'll find will start finding you, and you'll start getting to know them type of people. And don't put all your energy into people that aren't worth that time, because you find yourself incredibly disappointed.
Yeah, and a slightly connected question, and I don't want to puff myself up a little bit, but Modus Morin asks, how did I become so wise? And if I do have, I appreciate the compliment, although I would self-evaluate myself as a bit removed from wisdom as of yet. But what I have learned that has worked for me, I have learned only through failing a lot and through being in very bad places in life and trying to making a concerted effort about being conscientious about myself and being a better person every day a little bit. And, don't get me wrong, guys, I've done things in my life. And if any of my close friends are watching this, then you probably know what I'm referring to. That I've done things that have brought me great shame and regret in my life. And instead of letting that stain myself for my entire life, I've worked very hard at looking at that objectively and dispassionately, and deciding what I wanted to be that was different, and finding out how to get there. So if I do have any accumulated wisdom, it's only through having been stupid first. I think that's really the only way.
And that's really the leap. So, that's what I was saying. Yeah, it's what the leap. That's the leap you have to have. You have to have the ability to. You're going to be more wrong than you are right. It's just having the ability, having the belief, I suppose, and the mindset of going, I'm going to put myself out there in whatever it is that I want to do and what kind of person I want to be. And you're going to take hits along the way. But yeah, the way you ultimately learn, as Ryan's saying, is through mistakes and perseverance. I think perseverance is just an underrated skill.
Well, it's the determinant. The two biggest determinants of success are perseverance and conscientiousness, right?
Definitely.
If you blithely go throughout your day without trying to figure out what went wrong and what went right, and accentuating the things that went right and de-emphasizing the things that went wrong, and you don't have the determination to work your way through the early sticking points in trying a new hobby or a new skill or a new habit, then you will rarely find yourself greeted with success. So
cool. Right, I think. Is there any more questions you're on? Because I think we need to sort of wrap it up a bit, because we've been going on for quite a while. Man. But yeah, but just is there any more final questions?
I've got people just started pouring in questions like right as we're supposed to be ending. So John West, I want to address John West's question because he has been absolutely incredible for the TeamHuman community in general and has done so much great work for us. That I feel definitely compelled to basically address whatever he has to ask. He said, what's something important Felicia has taught you in life and what have you taught her in return? Well, you'll have to ask her the second question. In terms of the first, I guess it was saying like how you do anything and how you do everything. It's that thing I said earlier. It's about being conscientious and aware of where you are in life and what you need to do and what you need to do better. So that's that.
Brilliant. Yeah,
I've got a lot of little questions, like, is there a topic that I wish I had more knowledge of? I mean, everything. I wish I'd done more math and physics in college, that's for sure. That stuff is amazing.
On my emails, we have a question in regards to England. Is there anywhere in England you haven't been that you would like to go to?
I have never been to England, so anything would be new and exciting to me.
All right. So are you excited for London, I assume?
It's a really lame answer. Yeah, I'm really, really excited. I don't know enough to know what I should know. So.
But how do you know?
So there you go.
Okay.
I don't know enough to know what I don't know. So.
But how do you know?
I'm sure that after. Well, the thing is that after I go there the first time, I'm sure I'll take a mental accounting of my visit, and I'll tell some people and stream about where I went, and they were like, "Oh, you were 2 blocks away from this really awesome place, you dumbass, and you skipped it." And I'll be like, "Oh, I'll have to go back," Well, but
if you ever on your travels, if you ever on your travels find yourself in Newcastle, you know where I am.
Yeah, definitely, man. I drink the beer named after your town all the time. So
yeah. It's not just what we have here, just in case there's any stereotypical. Yeah. It's not all that we drink. There are other stuff available. But yeah, no, it is a very delicacy here. Like it's a very popular drink. I hear it's popular in America as well, though.
It is. It's one of the beers that's in every bar. Even bad bars have Newcastle, and that's what you end up drinking.
Yeah.
So either that or there's a couple of other ones like Sierra Nevada or Shiner Bock.
Excellent. Angry Welsh Gamer says, Ryan, please come to Wales instead. We have better whiskey.
We'll see.
Wales is nice.
Happens.
Wales is nice. It's where they filmed Doctor Who, if you're a Doctor Who fan. Yeah. Cardiff. So yeah, it's pretty great. So what I wanted to ask, just to kind of end, obviously we can do this in the future. We can do another one if you're up for it.
Sure.
But what I wanted to just ask is, what's the current future for Ryan? Like, I suppose, like, what are you streaming next on Twitch? Are you, what's the next thing?
Well, I will be starting up after much delay. I will be starting up my Summer in Fairbrook dating game stream again, and nice. I know a lot of you will be very, very happy to hear that. I will be starting that next week, very good. Don't worry. And I think we're wrapping up. We're wrapping up on Shadow of Mordor. So those of you who have been watching the stream, we'll be finishing that, and I'm trying to find another game to replace that. And I'll probably continue on with Ori and the Blind Forest as well. So that's the schedule for the stream. So there you go.
Do you have any idea? Are you filming any more Co-optitude shortly, or?
Let's see. Probably sometime in May, I would guess. I don't know
Okay.
exactly when though.
Cool. So how many
Yeah,
more are they all? So have you filmed? Like, I assume you built you filmed more than bulk. I remember you told me this last time. So how many?
Yeah, we typically film we typically film 8 episodes over 2 days, so 4 episodes a day. And those take place in the following 8 weeks. So I think we have a good 5 weeks of episodes left. So
Excellent. So yeah, and I'm currently playing Bloodborne on my stream, and it's really really good. I highly recommend that if you need something to shadow more.
Animagus is playing that as well. No,
Yeah.
and my friend Animagus is streaming that currently, so I'm not gonna have much stream overlap because she's so fucking good at
she's
her
awesome.
streaming game. So
yeah, pretty cool. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to do this podcast.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm so delighted to hear that. Even though you went through tough times, it's like I think what Winston Churchill once said: "If you're going through hell, just keep going." And I am really, really happy and proud of you that you came out the other end, and you did it in style as well.
Thanks,
so
man.
mega props to you for that.
I hope I will make sure to say hello if I see you at the London Comic Con. I'm pretty sure I'll be going to that.
Please
so
do.
if I do, I will say hello. And
do.
hopefully, I'd love to meet your I'd love to meet your sister Felicia. That's just a geek plug there.
Sure.
But thank you so much, and continued success with Co-optitude. Just to let people know, the stream that we've just done, the video stream of Ryan with me at the beginning that fucked up, it will be on will be on YouTube, so you can on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/geekapocalypse. It'll be the whole thing will be on, and you can also listen to this as an audio podcast on iTunes or on our website geekapocalypse.com.
Very much. And where can we find you on Twitter?
Yes.
Did you already say?
Right underneath, underneath your video. It's fine. At geek_apocalypse. I put a little banner up. So, please do follow all our stuff. I'm currently on Twitch all the time right now. I currently have a Monday to Friday schedule. So, have a look at that.
Like I said, such a great platform. And myself, you can find me right here on Twitch at twitch.tv/Ryon Day. That's RYON, not AN. RYONDAY, one word. And on Twitter, you can find me at Ryon_D, and various other places on the web. And if you do check out my Twitch channel, please check out the other streamers who I have on my other great streamers list, including my sister Felicia Day, Anna Magus, who is absolutely just a tremendous person, the infamous Collectible Cat, who is active in both of our chats today, as well as check me out on Twitter, Facebook, and everything else, guys. And please remember that every penny from my Twitch subscription fee does go to charity. And keep in mind, this is a one-time only investment. So for the low price of $5.99 US, you receive emotes and a subscriber badge. So the first month subscription fees, these are going to Austin Pets Alive, which is a local no-kill shelter / free charity spaying and neutering for pets. Next month's disbursement goes to the Task Force, guys. Such a worthy charity that does amazing work for the gay, lesbian, transsexual, bisexual, queer community here in the U.S. So please check it out. If you have a spare $5, please don't hesitate to subscribe. And if you have more than that, please don't hesitate to give back to your own community in a way that you see fit, even if it is with your time instead of your money. So thank you very much, Stephen, again. It was a pleasure talking with you today. Yeah,
awesome. As I say, I hope to see you in England. I hope you have a great month or so until then. Have a good. I will be watching on Co-optitude, so I'll be going. Wonderful. Yay! I spoke to Ryan when I'm watching the Co-optitude, so it'll all be good. Just to let people know as well, if anyone interested, because I know. Do you know Jesse Cox and from YouTube?
Yes, I do know Jesse Cox.
I'm currently talking to him about being on the podcast as well, which is awesome. So so please do.
He's a really cool dude.
Yeah,
he's a very cool dude.
He's been on Tabletop. I know we didn't talk about Tabletop. There's people bashing me on my thing about Tabletop. We will. Ryan spent a lot of time talking about that in the previous podcast, so if you haven't listened to it, On there, he talks about him being on the Fortune and Glory episode, so to listen to that, and Ryan goes into detail about that. That was a very heavy topic when we talked last time.
And
but thanks again.
Of course, thank you. Thank you to everybody out there who took a significant chunk of their day out to listen to me prattle on about issues. And thanks for everybody who asked questions. And please feel free to drop into one of my Twitch streams and say hi, or to ask other questions that you might want to know about. So again, thank you very much to everybody out there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you to all the questions. Thank you to Ron Gal for taking the time to put all the stuff together. Thank you for taking the time to all the questions were brilliant. Thank you so much to the Geek and Sundry community, TeamHuman as well, for me being an honorary member for the week. That was lovely.
Or forever. So,
yay! That would be great. But yeah, thank you so much. I will speak to you soon, Ryan. Speak to you all very soon.
Absolutely.
And I'll end the podcast I always end. In the words of the great B movie, Robot Jocks, crash and burn, everybody. And I'll see you all very soon for the next podcast. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Ryan. Take care.
Bye.
Hey, guys. Bye.
Bye.